Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Nightcap for April 22nd, 2021. We're back. We're back in action. Hot, spicy. Ready for the night. I am the Night Rider. Gotta get settled in. Gotta make sure I got water handy. That's important in Nightcap. You gotta have your tools, you know? Gotta have your whiskey. Gotta have your water. Okay? Gotta have the whole setup here. So how's it going, everybody? So yeah, an extra bonus episode of Nightcap. You know, try to do at least two live streams a week, whether it's just me or not. But here we are. Because we're all on the road to enlightenment. So, tonight is kind of, we're going to do a few things. We're going to get started off kind of light, maybe talk about something. And then we're going to do something kind of cynical, a little clickbaity, on purpose for the YouTube channel. We're going to be talking some inside baseball-esque type things of internet online communities. We're going to be talking about Lindsey Ellis's mask off video, and we'll talk about Lindsey Ellis and who she is and what happened to her and why she made a really long video. But I gotta tell you though, going into it pretty cynically, I'm like, well, this is kind of a thing that's going on the internet right now. Might as well go there. Might as well do it. But before we do that, we're going to just check out a few little things, get warmed up. You know how it is. So there's this Twitter handle, Twitter page, Twitter person called Resist Programming. Research, reveal, disrupt. I'm pretty sure they're communists. But there was this little clip of this video. This guy, David Grossman, apparently he's the #1 police trainer in the country. And he was given like a seminar, talks to cops, talks to the public also just about what it's like to be a cop, etc., etc. He was getting roasted for this little clip from one of his seminars where he talks about how good sex is after a shooting. Get that adrenaline going. And people were just kind of like going almost blindly, reflexively, just being like, oh, what a gross motherfucker. You hear what he's saying? But then you listen to what he says, and it's not like some sort of abnormal or even weird thing. He's just taking inventory of part of the process that people go through when they, I don't know, kill somebody and have to live with it. I hope that. Alright. But anyways, so we're going to check that video out first. Maybe chit chat about that for a little bit. I got this other one also from BreadTube about transgender sports leagues. And they want to make the argument that that is a transphobic construct. So we'll look at that, and then we'll get into some of the silly, cynical shit. I don't even know, man. Busy day today. Trying to do a lot of stuff today. It's my wife's birthday tomorrow. I'm always, she always does cool things for me on my birthday. It's like, we've been together almost 10 years. It's about time I step it up. I suppose. Step up my game. So yeah. Anyways, let's roll. Let's do it.
For 18 years, people know me, they trust me. I get a depth of information. I ask questions other people won't ask. Cop says knockdown, drag out fight, cuffed them and stuffed them. Finally get home at the end of the shift, and cop says gunfight, bad guys down. I'm alive. Finally get home.
It's funny like how just kind of stock motivational speaker this sounds like, or just like seminar speaker. I mean, granted, obviously, you know, it's directed at a specific audience, but like the cadence, the kind of shortening things, the bullet point nature of it, kind of interesting.
Home at the end of the incident, and they all say, the best sex I've had in months. Both partners are very invested in some very intense sex.
You like this guy? Hold on. This dude, look at him. He's like, what the fuck is he talking about? He's talking about balling. What's going on?
There's not a whole lot of perks that come with this job. You find one, relax, and enjoy it. Well, a bit of
So, yeah, people were freaking out about it, that clip. They were just saying, like, oh, what a gross guy. Like, he's just, like, kind of making this very general observation about the idea of, you know, having just risked your life. You could have died in that scenario. You come home. Everybody's happy to be together. Everybody's happy to be alive. Oftentimes, this happens also after you've had a fight. Can elevate the sexual experience. He's got some other, there's some other, they have a whole list of clips here. I haven't really watched really any of them, so maybe we'll check it out. Killing is just not a big deal. Feel good about it. So, well, this is kind of a longer one, but let's check it out. David Grossman. Meeting new people every day on the internet. I wonder, did somebody add the soundtrack? It's very like ominous. David Grossman's books are required reading at the FBI Academy and at police academies throughout the country.
I am convinced from a lifetime of study, if you fully prepare yourself, in most cases, killing is just not that big a deal. For a mature warrior who's prepared themselves mind, body, and spirit for a lifetime, for a mature warrior who's killing somebody represents a clear and present danger to others, it's just not that big a deal. There's no wrong way to respond to killing. There's many ways people respond, and they're all the same. They're all okay. But if you could choose how you responded, I think you'd want to feel good about it, yeah? The satisfaction of hitting the target under the stress of combat, to do what you're trained to do, to stop a deadly force threat, to save lives, to save your own life. Something called survive euphoria. It feels real good.
Well, that's like in the most extreme scenario, right? Like if you know the context of which this is happening, that you are in fact doing those things. I think you could probably make that argument in some way. Was that the young girl's name, Michaela Bryant? She's trying to stab somebody. The officer shoots her, saves the other girl's life. Obviously, that dude's probably not buzzing about it, not just because of the cultural landscape we live in, but also probably because you had to shoot a 16-year-old girl. That can't feel good. But in that context, though, you can make the assertion that it's what had to happen, I suppose. If that is the mandate of a police officer, to protect and serve. And listen, and I'm watching these things, you should know I am very critical of the police. I'm very critical of a lot of policies of the police department. I think there's a lot of adverse effects from the way they police. I think there's a lot of bad cops, a lot of stupid cops, a lot of ignorant people in policing. And it's kind of one of these professions that it's a calling. Like, you have to be invested in kind of the moral and virtuous nature of it. It is like a public service. You are a public servant. That's part of the deal. You have to buy into that, I think, to be a successful officer. I really do. And it's not something that's for everybody. You know, it's just like nurses, right? That's not a profession that's for everybody. But just like cops, it's a profession that has kind of a low barrier to entry. You can start off making pretty decent money. The schooling is like, while it's intense, For nurses, more intense, but it's not like outside of the realm of possibility in terms of like, you know, economically, what people make. But there's a lot of bad nurses because they don't have the right temperament. I would say the same thing with cops. And I have people in my family that are cops. I have people in my family that are nurses. Luckily, they seem to be the right kinds of people, at least the nurses. Not so sure about the cops, but it is just not. It's not something for everybody. You have to be a really like special person to be able to deal with that kind of shit on a regular basis. So, just to be clear, guys. Just to be clear.
Some people feel bad, they don't feel bad. Yeah? Some people feel bad, they feel good about it. Yeah? LAPD brought me out to do in-service day for the detective. LAPD detective in-service day is 600 people. One crusty old detective came up, she said, Colonel, you're the first one in 20 years to tell me it's okay to not feel bad about killing that guy. Yeah? You know, a lot of people have been on the left end of the political spectrum, been driven crazy by the movie American Sniper. Yeah? Y'all see the movie American Sniper? By the way, the whole sheepdog piece, remember Dad at the dinner table, the sheep, the wolf, and the sheepdog? That wasn't in the book. They got that straight from me with my permission. They quoted whole sentences out of my stuff to put that in the front of the movie. It's pretty cool. But folks, a lot of people were deeply concerned that he didn't feel any remorse. He felt good about killing those guys. There's got to be something wrong with him. He should have felt remorse. He should have felt anguish. What do you think? Is something wrong with him? No, nothing wrong with him. I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times.
This guy's got a crazed look in his eye. But I don't think that's, I mean, you know, I don't know if it's a great idea to, I don't know, politicize or act in a partisan way when you're giving a seminar about policing and about how people feel. Maybe it's just the reality of the world we live in. This seems like an odd tangent. I know he's trying to make the parallel comparison between kind of warrior culture and the types of people that have to deal with these things and the different types of reactions. You know, he did open saying, like, there's no wrong way to feel about it. Everybody's going to feel differently. But if you don't feel bad about it, that there's also nothing wrong with you. Now, granted, that's probably a fine line, right? There's a fine line between feeling good about something like that and maybe being a sociopath. It's possible. It's possible.
Those who fully prepare themselves, it's just not that big a deal.
Creepy, ominous music. Well, see, like, these things are like, they're taking these clips, and they're not really like, there's clearly more context. He keeps talking. They're giving like these little snippets, these little sections. Like, you would probably have to watch this whole thing, this 90-minute, hour seminar, however long it is, and really like to really understand the full context of what he's saying and what he's getting at. It's about a culture. It's about a personality thing. And I'm not like, I've never heard of David Grossman, so I'm not here trying to defend David Grossman or his worldview. He could be a total piece of shit. And then maybe I would watch this seminar and feel like, oh man, this guy's really extreme. He's really crazy. Maybe I would. I don't know. So this one, it says, he teaches cops they are the man of the city, like what the frontiersman was to the frontier, who fight violence with superior violence, righteous violence. Well, I mean, that's just a fucking fact of life. I don't, like, you know, is that the, like, you know, he's talking to police officers about their own pathology, their own personalities. Like, this is not something that you probably say in the general public, I guess, maybe, you know. But it's, you know, violence and stopping violence is 100% a fact of life.
The policeman is the man of the city. Heard of the mountain man, the frontiersman? Nobody talks about frontiersmen anymore. We still talk about policemen. You are to your city, your county, your state, but the frontiersman was the frontier. You fight violence. What do you fight it with? Superior violence. Righteous violence, yeah?
He has this like very interesting presence, this David Grossman guy. And okay, so this video was made by Resist Programming. So they're definitely adding this, like, there's an ominous, like, kind of tonal thing going on the bottom of it. It's kind of funny.
Violence is your tool. Violence is your enemy. Violence is the realm we operate in. You are men and women of violence. You must master it, or it will destroy you. Yeah?
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, the person that posted this reflexively kind of lashes out at the using the term violence, even though it's probably a pretty appropriate term to use. And you have to imagine, right? There's different kinds of violence. There's different gradations of violence that are going to be on kind of a spectrum from, like, for lack of a better way to put it, evil and righteousness, like, that's just a reality. If you have somebody that's, like, beating their wife, obviously that's violence, closer to evil. But whoever comes in and stops that person, it might require a physical altercation. Well, you're going to be farther on the other end. You're going to be more close to righteousness. So, I don't know. I feel like this will probably be the last one, because I don't think these, well, we've only got a couple of seconds left, but it's not really a controversial statement, I suppose.
The policeman is the man.
The man of the city. Okay, David Grossman teaches police to have a violent mindset and has trained more U.S. law enforcement officers than anyone else. Grossman encourages prison guards to fantasize about being superheroes with capes protecting the city. Yeah. See, I'm trying to, like, think, like, is this something like where, if the wrong person heard it, where they get the wrong idea? If some of these people in there, they're chuds, whatever. Oh, an ice cream. Thank you, Prophet. I appreciate it. Banking those lemons. Yeah, so I don't know.
Here from prison, probation, jail, because I honor you. I publicly honor you. You look in the eyes of scary people every day, and you know the world's favorite places are behind bars, yes? So you do this. On your way home that night, park your vehicle on the overpass for just a minute. Step out of your vehicle for just a minute. Look out on your city. Look at your citizens going about their lives, and know deep in your gut that today, at the risk of your life, you made their world a better place, whether they know it or not. Then walk up that bridge rail, put your hands on that rail, look out on your city, and let your cape blow in the wind.
So to envision yourself as a heroic figure in your city is, I guess people have to take exception with. Seems a little stupid. David Grossman teaches police his killology curriculum all over the country. Police are trained to see themselves as a predator ready to snuff out a human life.
Once you've made
Whoa.
to take a human life, you're a transformed creature. You're a predator.
Yes.
What does the predator do?
Thank you, Prophet. Well, see, man, this is the thing. I think when you donate lemons, a portion of it goes into this community chest. But I can't pick who gets the lemons. I thought I'd be able to, but I can't. So it's just like a random thing, a random giveaway. So I'm glad you got it this time, buddy.
They kill. Only a killer can hunt a killer. Are you?
That's pretty extreme. Well, I mean, I know what you. It's the context of the seminar. Like, it kind of changes things. Like, he's directing what he's saying to a very particular audience, speaking in a very particular way. But it kind of romanticizes things in a way that, like, I understand intellectually, like, what the function of this is, the utility of it is to embolden people to take these risks, do their job, that maybe in the hopes that, and they're still good people. They have a place in the world.
You emotionally,
They're not all good people, buddy, but nonetheless.
spiritually, psychologically prepared to snuff out a human life in defense of innocent lives. If you can't make...
Is that like a fucking wild thing to say? Like, as a cop, or as anybody that's protecting anything, you have to be willing to do that. Those are the stakes out there on the streets, boys.
That decision. You need to find another job. Once you...
Well, he's right. I mean, that's so weird for me to be in this position to defending police, but you see, U.S. police are trained to only worry about lawsuits stemming from not shooting people. Besides, being sued for deadly force is just a chance for overtime. Was he talking a little shop? Like, the way they frame these things, and then you actually listen to what he says, and if you're, am I being overly charitable? Maybe I am. I don't know. I don't think I am. I just think it's more just practical than that these people are assuming it is, because like they're setting up what they want you to take out of it, take away from it, and then you listen to the clip, and if you're just already in this kind of mindset for the people that would follow this, then you're just gonna agree with their assertion. It's like EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon. When you watch those ghost hunting shows, and they say, "Oh, look, it said get away," it said go away, and they kind of prompt you. And then you hear the garbled noise, and you hear it. You distinctly hear it. It's a psychological trick. It's a magician's trick, basically.
Whenever we survey cops about use of deadly force, they consistently tell us that number one concern is what? Begins with an L. Lawsuits, liability, lawyers, I'm going to get sued. Do you understand you can be sued for not shooting?
I wonder when this was filmed. I mean, he was talking about that American Sniper movie. It's probably a few years ago then. Definitely a different climate out there.
Stand there and do nothing while people are murdered. What do they call that? Cowardice, malfeasance,
negligence of duty.
Dereliction of duty, deliberate indifference, blood on your hands. We might call it assisted suicide. Because the one that dies next might be you, yes?
His face is killing me. Yeah? He has that like Tony Robbins vibe to him. It's kind of funny.
There's only one way out.
And
know the law, know it well.
To blast them.
Get every training opportunity you can. Don't be afraid of being sued. Everybody gets sued. Just a chance for overtime.
It's a joke. It's a joke, Twitter guys. Resist programming. But what the fuck did he just say? He's just like, know the rules, be informed, and train. Be ready for it. Now, this is the problem, you would probably say, with a lot of cops, is that they don't have that. They don't do that. So isn't what he's saying, even in like kind of just the common speak of what's going on out there in the world, isn't he kind of promoting that idea? I think these people are being a little unfair, guys. Just saying.
Be afraid of being successfully sued. Whenever
the music is killing me. They added this ominous music. It's so stupid. Of course, the police love David Grossman, clap for him, and laugh at his jokes. All he's training funded taxpayer money. David is so popular, police officers ask him to autograph books. Okay, whatever. I mean, that's... Sorry, guys. I thought there'd be something more there. I thought it would be, like, way more interesting or spicy or something. Christ. Really not a lot there. There wasn't a lot to jump into. You're like, oh, he's just kind of saying... I don't know, some pretty standard shit. All right, now let's get into some trouble. This will be the thing that will determine whether or not this actually goes on YouTube. Or at least the whole thing. So we're gonna be talking. It's who's this YouTuber? I'm gonna give him some credit there. Jesse Gender. Why a transgender sports league would be transphobic. Now let's go in with an open mind. We'll hear the arguments. Seems kind of silly, but we'll see. We'll see. Obviously, as you can see, we're in the hands of someone we can trust. Oh, you got a Mass Effect poster back there? I like Mass Effect. What is this? Star Trek stuff? I like Star Trek. Is that a Captain America shield? Fascist. You just fucked it up, Jesse Gender. Alright, let's roll.
Hello, interwebs, your favorite dorky transgender human here, yet again to talk about trans people in sports. I may be dorky and unathletic, but no, that's about it. I may be dorky and unathletic. No amount of hormones can change that about me. Hormones just gave me boobs, which I guess are kind of like sports balls. So that's sporty, and I can wear sport.
This is the world that Joss Whedon built. All of these people just sound like fucking Joss Whedon characters. Sports balls? Sports balls? Chat says prediction. It's transphobic because it doesn't require people to pretend they're along with their reality. Yeah, I have a feeling that's probably going to be somewhat of the argument. It's going to be definitely going to be about that, because it's going to just make the case that what is it? Equal but not the same is transphobic. They're going to kind of ignore and not really get into the idea that, like, we have different leagues with different types of people that play in those leagues. Like, you have, you know, women's leagues, men's leagues, disabled leagues. And the reason why there's different leagues is so that it's fair. There's equity, right? In terms of fairness, physical ability. I have a feeling they're probably not going to... Either if they address it, they're going to be very obtuse about it. That would be my prediction. We'll see.
Sports bra now, so, and they certainly bounce. But regardless of my boob talk, we're starting off strong with this video. I also do have informed opinions, so I want to...
These are the people that ruined Star Trek, by the way. These are the people that have ruined any kind of nerd fandom. Completely ruined it. That's why Star Trek sucks now.
Address this lingering talking point surrounding the recent prominent discussions and laws around transgender people in sports, particularly trans women in women's sports, and specifically around the argument that I've seen come up that, well, if trans people in women's sports are so controversial and problematic, why don't we just create a transgender sports league and just have all trans people play in that, and wouldn't that just fix the problem? We have the men's league, we have the women's leagues, and then we have the trans league, I guess. And we could even have, like, transgender specific sports like the Dick Off-a-thon, the NB Games, T-ball, because T-ball stands for testosterone, because trans men inject... Look, I'm trying my best here with these jokes, all right?
You should just not do it. Or get a writer. I'm available. I could write you some great trans jokes. See if we come up with a few tonight. Who knows? Maybe we'll send the video Jesse Gender's way.
But seriously, a few weeks ago, I did a video on the issue of transgender people in sports, and I highly encourage you to watch that video as it covers most of the topics that were sort of brought up around the idea of trans women in sports. And I think that this video is going to be...
Watching things like this makes me very self-conscious about my own YouTube videos, because you're just like, even we're 90 seconds in, I'm like, get to the fucking point. And I understand, like, I am a verbose person, you know? I've even, like, 'cause every once in a while I'll go back and, like, watch an old movie review because somebody will, like, leave a comment or they say something like, oh, you didn't even say what you didn't like about it, and this is what this is, and yada, yada, yada. And then I go back and watch it to see if they're right. I was like, oh, who knows? Maybe, you know. I do those things extemporaneously. I'm just kind of off the cuff. And most of the time they're wrong. But sometimes I'm watching them, I'm like, get to the fucking point, guy. Just fucking go, please.
Be more of a sort of further discussion and addendum to that video rather than sort of like being an all-encompassing look at the issue, because I already did it in that video. But I did want to do this video because many people in the comments of that video did bring up this potential solution of creating a transgender athletic league as a possible way to fix the problems that I discussed in the video, and I hadn't really discussed it. Also, Newt is now here. He wants to hear about this, don't you, Newt? Hi, bud. You're just gonna stare at me? He's just gonna hang out right over there, right off camera. Like literally, like you can see his ear.
Okay, I'm not this bad. I got that going for me.
Yeah, there's his ear. It's right there. You're going to see him pop in and out of the camera every once in a while. Also, one quick announcement to make before we get into the meat of this discussion. Normally on this channel, I do videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as well as some reviews and live streams as well. However, next week, there will be no Monday or Wednesday video because my Friday video is going to be one of the biggest videos I've ever done on this channel.
Oh my gosh.
And that video is going to contain an important announcement about my own personal life and this channel. All positive, all good. So just get hyped and get excited. I'm very excited to show that video
Jessie Gender is going to announce that she's detransitioning
to you. But as a result of how much work that video is going to take me, as well as me wanting to extra highlight and focus that video on this channel and sort of point everyone towards it, there will be no Monday or Wednesday video. There will still be the normal live streams. There will still be my review of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But beyond that...
Oh, thank God. Thank God you're in the business of talking about Disney Plus shows. What a novel concept. I suppose as novel as watching videos on live streams and talking about them, but still, come on.
Just that Friday video is going to be the big thing next week, so please look for that. But anyways, back to the Transgender Sports League. This may seem like a good solution at first glance, at face value. Trans people may get to play... Hi, Newt. He's just going to come in and out. Trans people may get to... Oh, boy. Newt, come here. Come on. Out, bud. But anyways, let's get back to the discussion of transgender people having their own transgender league.
Please, let's go.
This may seem like a good solution at first glance. Trans people will get to play sports. The issue of trans women potentially dominating women's sports is avoided, even though that isn't really an issue. Again, I talk about that.
Dominating. Oh, my God. I just, you know... It's just this idea that, like, you want... People talk about things like the patriarchy and the problems that spur from things like that, right? Like, isn't this just an extension of that? You know, there's a small segment of society globally that actually have like body dysmorphia, have a problem with it, right? And that must be hell. I don't begrudge or envy that at all. But a lot of times it's just like these really disaffected, lost people, once men, once male, or once before they transitioned or whatever, and they like want to eradicate the concept of like the female experience, femininity, what that means. And this is the thing, like, and I've argued about this with my brother. I think there's an old Zoobox Live where we talked about it, where it's just like, shouldn't we be protecting that concept of like what it means to be a woman? Like suddenly you're just like, oh, like just like the whole feminist project, all that stuff. Like this seems so counter to that. And that now we have to make room and just completely deconstruct like all of the stuff that women benefit from or that are for women specifically. And we're going to just destroy all that because of a 0.02% of the population. Like, doesn't mean you should be discriminatory it doesn't mean you should harass people or whatever. Like, you know, people are people. I treat everybody on an individual level, but it just seems like they're so casual about just destroying these kind of just very basic norms. This is weird. Title on it. Shalom, hey, what's up, Peabody?
That in my other video. But this just lets everyone win, right? Well, not so much, because there's a lot of issues under the surface of this argument that aren't immediately apparent, but really have a lot of problems with them, including some really, really transphobic ones when you start to dig really deeper. Even though I know most people, and I will make this very clear, I know most people who commented on that and thought of this idea, put forth this idea of a trans athletic league, didn't intend those ideas at all. They weren't trying to be transphobic. In fact, I think most people who argued for a trans league did so out of a desire to try to be equitable and kind to trans people and allow them to have a solution to be able to play sports. But while that may be the intention of most people, and I appreciate that greatly, we do need to talk about why this idea won't work, and also why it's very deeply problematic and hard.
Why wouldn't it work? Like, so should we just have just like genderless sports leagues? should we just meld them all together and see what happens? It seems like men would dominate that. And like, you know, and Jesse here tried to kind of wave away the idea, oh, you know, like trans women dominating female sports. Well, like, I don't know, like at what standard do we have? Like, so if you're a man if you're like what, Fallon Fox, the UFC person, like 30 years with testosterone, their bones hardening, et cetera, gets to go in and just like, and beat the fuck out of women. Is that what we're talking about? Is that fair? We're talking about high school boys who decide they're going to identify as women and then just dominate every fucking high school sport, which could, you know, cut off access to things like, you know, scholarships and stuff like that for young girls. I mean, come on. Peabody Nick says, there's not enough trans that play sports to form a league. Well, that may be true, I guess. But like, I don't understand like why you would be okay with the idea of just deconstructing and completely obliterating just what the vast majority of people experience. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying it's fair, but it is what it is.
Harmful in the long run. But let's start off with this argument in good faith and just ask the question of why not create it. First and foremost, the very concept isn't really feasible in the first place. While I spoke about in my original video that I don't think we should really segregate sports on the basis of sex anyways, but rather on different distinctions specific to each sport, such as weight classes for boxers, the reason that sex-segregated sports are so common is because, well, there are a lot of people who identify as cisgender, i.e. those who identify with their gender from birth, men and women. No matter where you go, if you want to create a men's sports league or a women's sports league, you're going to generally probably find enough men or women who are interested and available to create your team. The same isn't really true of trans people. Only about...
That's a fair point. Like Peabody Nick brought up. Like, it's a fair point. It is. Or would there be enough? I mean, I don't know. Actually, who knows? Who the fuck knows if there would be enough? I guess that's an assumption people are making. But the idea that like, oh, we just have sexless sports leagues anyways. Okay, like if you want to see people, just women get completely eradicated from every sports discipline, then I guess go for it. In Connecticut, 13 out of 14 records in high school track and field were won by boys. Yeah.
About 0.6% of the U.S. population is estimated to be transgender, so that equates to maybe one or two trans people, especially if you're living in a smaller town or community, if any trans people. And considering that many of these discussions and laws have centered around trans girls on the student level, one or two trans students per school really can't make up a whole team. So just feasibly.
Yeah, but what we're talking about is we're setting a precedent. That's what we're talking about. Like, it's not just like, oh, well, right now is only like, it's only, two trans women per high school in the country. Like, that's not the issue. Like, it's a philosophical question. It's also an ethical one. Because so what if there's only two? Like, you get to disenfranchise the other 100 people? I don't know.
It's not really a possible idea. It might be possible in, say, a larger city or community. I mean, Los Angeles, which has a pretty large transgender community, has, for example, the Transgender Choir of Los Angeles. So it's possible to get together a large group of transgender people in larger communities. So you might be able to do it there, but would we also have to segregate these teams by gender on top of that? Would there be a trans men league, a non-binary league, a trans women league? And so that distinguishes it even further and eliminates...
Well, if trans people in general have like the perspective that there shouldn't be any distinctions, I guess like trans sports leagues could figure that out themselves. I mean, you want to put this kind of normie paradigm on top of what a trans league would be. Doesn't seem like they would do the same things. So I guess that would have to be a different thing. It would be a different thing altogether if like the majority of that group feels like these things are antiquated anyways. Well, then, show us the way. Go on, kings and queens.
Dominates how many people you can have on each team. But even then, who would they play? Would you have this team compete against cisgender men or women's teams? Wouldn't that just be the same problem?
No, they wouldn't. That would be completely defeat the purpose. And I don't think, it's interesting. And I think I was trying to get to this before. It's just like, why don't we have these conversations with trans men, like, at all? You ever hear people who are like really concerned about the social place of trans men? Does that ever come up? Like, at all? It doesn't. Not very often. I don't hear it very much at all. Actually, I don't know if I've ever really heard somebody really concerned or worried about it. It's because that there's a whole power imbalance that is different. It's just the physicality, the biology of between men and women. Like, men are just not afraid of trans men, or they're not concerned about like being displaced by them either, whether it's sports or a physical altercation or whatever. They're just not worried about it. We're just not worried about it.
That we had at the start anyways.
Why is it always trans women? I'll tell you why it's always trans women, because men are fucking pushy. Or former men.
Of trans people playing and going up against cisgender people? Or would these leagues travel around from city to city playing other transgender teams that may or may not exist? Now, let's even say that that is possible, which it most likely probably wouldn't be, that we could create a bunch of different transgender sports teams in different cities who could play each other. Who would fund these teams going from city to city? I mean, where would they get the money?
I don't know. Look at the Human Rights League. All of these things that make millions and millions of dollars and get all these government grants and all of these stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe they could pony up some cash. Maybe you could get intersectional. You could have the millions of dollars that Black Lives Matter acquires from private donations and states and the federal government. Maybe they could help as well. I don't know. Or you could roll it into just like you do with every other fucking sport, which is something I actually don't agree with. I think like these hugely rich sports teams, like the NFL, for instance, right, in America, taxpayers pay to build those stadiums. We pay to build those stadiums in our states, whether we want to or not. We're not even fucking asked. They say, well, it's a boon to the economy. They gain so much money. Like, so what? Who gives a fuck? Like, I'm not saying that should they get like a tax subsidy or something? Well, maybe, just like every other fucking company. Like, taxpayers aren't like paying the average entrepreneur to come in and build shit in their state. So why is there this huge exception for these kinds of things? But anyways, I guess that's a side tangent. That's a different point. But let's get back to the video.
Look at the difference already in how men's and women's sports teams are funded and paid today. Forbes did a report that found that in basically every single sport besides tennis, which is mostly a solo individual sport anyways, men were paid and men's teams were funded significantly more than women's and women's teams. So
it's because of how much they make. It's not even a question. This was a big thing a couple years ago with the, women's soccer team. It's still a thing. People still talk about it. But women's soccer teams, it's like specifically in soccer, like their pay rate is based on like viewership and sponsorships and ads and all the things that they can sell. It's just because more people watch it. That's why men make more. Also, it's kind of the same true. The WNBA, it's just not as popular. It's just not as popular. And, and this is, I'm not trying to be like a misogynist or a sexist or anything to say this, is because it is not as physically impressive, I think, for most people. Watching like women do physical feats, maybe if there was like a birthing league, we turned birthing into a sport, that would be impressive. That's something that is, not everybody can do. So we got some stuff. It's ratings. Hello. I agree with you. And admired. This would be Chat's Prophet says, this would all be a lot simpler if we just didn't have to play pretend with these supposed adult people. People don't want to watch women's sports as much as men. Sorry, lady, I'm a woman. It's fucking true. No, I mean, it is true. It's not, but it's not like, I don't understand why it's controversial. I think it's just like the concept of athletic ability and what is impressive. It's just like men the physicality of men, they can just achieve greater heights, I suppose, right? Hammer Guy 35 says, I bet women porn stars make more than males. They do. Actually, by a quite significant margin. So I bet you trans porn stars probably make more than everybody, you know? Well, I appreciate that. I don't know. I'm probably going to pronounce your name wrong. Anandamide 2AG.
That into account, that women's teams are already kind of screwed over financially, how would you think a transgender athletic team would be funded? Probably not at all. Considering how...
Actually, you know what, though? Would it be funded? Like, would it make money? Would they be able to sell ads and stuff like that determine how much people make? Actually, probably, at least for the first year or so, I guarantee you, people would be very curious. Whether it's like sincere or ironic or morbid curiosity, I bet you they'd probably get a lot of people watching, at least for a while. Probably be more successful than the XFL. That'd be my prediction.
How hard it is for LGBTQ issues to get funded even when they're much more life-threatening than sports, like transgender healthcare issues, for example. I doubt you'll be able to get enough funding for a transgender team to regularly play other transgender teams traveling across the country, let alone any transgender athletes who would be able to take enough time off of work to do so, because I'm sure as hell you won't find enough money to pay transgender athletes enough for a full-time salary just playing sports. And again, what about solo?
Listen, I bet you they could probably come up with like... at least $40,000 a year. I'm sure they could. What is the XFL? The XFL was WWF, or maybe it was WWE. No, it's WWF. They tried to like create a more like intense, hardcore sports, like a football, like arena football thing. And they pushed it, and it was this big thing. It was Vince McMahon was the head of it. And they pushed it. They had this big marketing ad. They spent like $200 million trying to get it out there, and I think it lasted 2 weeks. It was like going to be an extra thing. Like you would watch an XFL on Saturdays, and then they would have the regular NFL on Sundays. But it literally lasted, I think, 2 games before it just completely collapsed. They had no viewership at all.
Solo sports like tennis or weightlifting or boxing, things like that. Women's sports are often significantly less promoted, so what do you think trans tennis or trans boxing would get enough promotion or funding to even be feasible as their own leagues or their own individual competitions things? Even if you have solo trans athletes playing against each other, like would you, again, like at a weightlifting event, would you have women's, men's, and then transgender sort of competitions? That just seems weirdly unnecessary and just dilutes the whole point of this.
Like, what the fuck are they talking? Like, she's acting like these are these crazy things. Like, oh, how would this even work? I mean, you'd have men weightlifting and women weightlifting, and then trans people. I can't even fathom. Why would we even bother? Like, just fucking pudding brains, applesauce brains. Like, this person has not even attempted to make an argument. They're just kind of like saying things. I feel like I'm listening to my fucking self.
Competition idea? So just on the face of it, this whole concept doesn't really hold up to any scrutiny as a potentially realistic solution of the problem, no matter how good faith or kindly the argument is. But taking that into account, there's something else about this argument that really irks me, because even if this was somehow feasible, it just is kind of wrong to do. Because it's saying that we should treat transgender people as a completely separate group, that we should...
I totally agree, Anand. It is like Jen Psaki. Honestly, yes.
Create a separate but equal league. And I think putting it in those terms kind of highlights the issue. Now, look, I don't want to take this equation of transgender issues and equating it to racial issues too far, because race in America and transgender and LGBTQ issues in America are two discussions that, while they have a lot of similarities in terms of how discrimination is placed against these two communities, there's a lot of similar ways that
Careful,
rhetoric
Jesse.
and harm is done to people of different races and people of LGBTQ identities and transgender identities specifically. They also do have very different contexts and histories within, especially the United States, such as with the history of institutionalized segregation and slavery that black people had to face in sports. But I also do think that this specific point in comparison kind of makes it clear that arguing to separate trans people out is an inherently problematic argument. It's saying separating transgender people out from cisgender folks otherizes us. It makes us seen as something different and weird when we...
Hold on. So is the implication here that anything that has its own lane otherizing? Like, because that you would have to, like, logically from what she's saying, you would have to make the same conclusion. Oh, well, you know, it's a women's league, so we've otherized. It's a men's league, so we've otherized. Well, you know, you can't say that about men's leagues because it's the dominant one. Like, what the fuck are they talking about? You're just trying to create the most fair scenario possible. That's it. That's what it's just so basic. And they try to overcomplicate it. I mean, I've watched videos of people fucking like going into like bone density after you start taking hormones and stuff. It's like, man, you guys, if you have to go that deep with it, you have to, like, you're missing the point. Especially when it comes to sports and the opportunities that sports provides people, especially, you know, people of lesser means. A lot of poor kids come up, get involved in sports, get their life set straight. You're going to be taking these opportunities away from people. Well, at least, actually, not from people. You're going to be taking them away from young women. Specifically young women. That's who's most affected by this. And it's kind of just so bizarre. Like, you just see these people that just like completely disregard that. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's not a big deal to you. It's fucking so weird. So like it lacks empathy on such a deep, fundamental level. Like, they just act like they don't understand what you're saying. That doesn't conform to my worldview. And it's all these fucking people on YouTube. They're all like these fucking overeducated assholes that all have philosophy degrees, and they think that they know what the fuck they're talking about. It's a goddamn sickness out there on the internet. And these are the people that are informing like an entire generation. An entire generation of young people that watches this shit. Because if you look at the demographics of people that watch stuff on YouTube, we're talking like from the ages of like 10 to 34. Like people my age. And they watch these people. And they just take it as it's an authority. Like, oh, cool, you got a good camera and you got a set. Like, oh, cool. That's why I do everything I can on Zoobox to make this the most fucking chintzy, awful, low-key, lo-fi looking thing. I don't want any kids looking at my stuff. Let's check back in with the chat. Hammer Guy 35 says, listening to most libs is painful. I agree. Anna says, yep, exactly, I agree. I was about to say that. They are just making up words thinking they are educated. I agree.
Aren't. You know, as I said in the original video, trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary people are non-binary people and deserve to play on the sport.
What is a non-binary person in that paradigm? Trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary people are non-binary. Like, that's the whole thing. It's just a game. Like, that is such a nebulous term. I'm non-binary. I'm neither. Okay, well then aren't you? Then you're separate from the other groups. Like, what the? Like, they have to. Like, it just gives me such a goddamn headache. I'll be honest with you.
Sports teams that align with their identity. And as kind of alluded to within that too, non-binary people, because we sex segregate on sports, don't really have anywhere to go specifically. They kind of have to choose one or the other if they're allowed to play in sports at all. We should be segregating on things that are specific to each sport. And also, going back to my original video on this topic, sports are an inherently unfair institution, an unfair thing. That's kind of the point, that someone is better than someone else. And transgender people are just people, and so we deserve to have access to sports like everyone else. We deserve the chance to show what our bodies can do in comparison to other people's bodies. And you can't argue to me that...
See, this is the whole, like, completely keeps missing the plot. Like, what Jesse just said is self-refuting in a sense, right? Like, because you're like, yeah, but that we have leagues with people with similar body types. So if you start like mixing them in, you're going to get an imbalanced result. It's just not that crazy.
We should be placed in separate groups, set aside from each other, when we have every right to compete alongside and with everyone else, both within our identities and also just in that inherently, unfair competition to show that maybe we can beat these people in certain ways. Again, maybe we can find different ways to separate us out.
Yeah, maybe we can just beat the fuck out of women and young girls. Maybe we can just do that. Maybe that's just a thing we can do. Gets me off.
Rather than just on sex, but we have every right to
Yes,
compete
Hammer.
against other people who can maybe beat us, maybe not. That's kind of the point of sports. Even more so, as I pointed out in my original video, the science behind all of this is still very clearly out on if transgender women actually do have an advantage against cisgender women, and where we do and where we don't. Again, I could...
How, like, it's the denial of reality to suggest that you don't have an advantage. That is just a denial of reality. It's just like, because they're going to make this really, like, minutia driven argument about like muscle mass and bone density and blah blah blah, like I was saying before. And it's not even that it's inconclusive, like, because they don't really know. Nobody really knows, because this stuff hasn't actually had like the rigorous scientific attention to really give an exacting result. And it's just so frustrating.
Break down the studies and science like I did in the first video, but let's just use common sense. Maybe a trans woman who went through a male puberty might be able to do better in swimming because she has longer arms.
See, this is where it comes in. Give your children puberty blockers so they don't ever have to face these issues. So when a 6-year-old tells you that they're confused, just fucking make it so, just fucking chemically castrate them. Oh, that would be great. Yeah. Yeah.
Arms, but maybe the extra body mass that she has due to increased bone density and lessened muscle mass because of her taking hormones might slow her down in swimming. So we don't know which. Maybe she'll have an advantage and maybe she won't. Kind of the point in sports to figure out if they do or not, if someone does. Trans women also have increased weight due to, like I said, bone density and lowered oxygen capacity after being put on hormones for a year. So she might not be as fast a runner against a cisgender man.
But she could totally punch you in the face and bust it to a million pieces.
But then again, maybe a trans woman might be a faster runner because she might have statistically longer strides. It all varies from sports to sport and honestly from person to person. So it's really just kind of pointless to me to argue because, again, the whole point of the thing is to decide who is better. So like, if someone has an advantage in sports, my answer would be like, yeah, someone might. That's kind of the point. So if the point of sports...
Yeah, because there's a difference between like, it's fair in the sense that like, if it's like naturally occurring and one gender or the other. There's men that are obviously way more capable than other men. Women, the same thing. Like, this just completely kind of... it changes that paradigm in a way that this person is not appreciating.
Is based on unfair advantage. To single out transgender people for being transgender within that is inherently transphobic. You're saying these people don't get to take part in our league and they should just be put over there. To say
See, because it's the thing, like, they have to, like, they can't say that there should be a trans league of any sport at any time, because the mantra is that trans women are women and trans men are men. So if they ever were to give into that, they would have to kind of lose that other argument, and they're not going to do that. It's not going to happen, especially with the intelligentsia here. And this is the kind of the basic shit. Even the more popular people, because I don't know how popular this person is, but like, you get somebody like ContraPoints, who's kind of starting to mainstream the concept of like transgenderism and what it means and what the transition process is like. And that's another fucking reject philosophy major. They don't actually make arguments. They very rarely like deal with reality. Like the tangible reality that we all exist in. They just don't. And people put them up on pedestals as if they're like these great modern thinkers. It's really frustrating.
Transgender people should be segregated from everyone else because they are trans is just wrong. And I feel that this overall conversation shouldn't be who we should exclude from a sport, but how best to include everyone. And again, this means, as I've said numerous times in this, that the answer to this question is that we should stop segregating sports by sex in general. That would also allow non-binary people to play in the sports without having to choose.
See, this is the thing, right? Because this is a trans woman, They do not give a fuck about women. They do not give a fuck about them. And they are the loudest people in this movement. Fuckheads like this. They do not give a fuck. They just want to deconstruct everything. They don't care who's disenfranchised as long as they feel better about it. You know, it's a complex issue, I suppose, in some regards. But that's like they just gave up the ghost there. Just really told us how they actually really feel.
Which gender they want to be viewed as in their sport. And also, I should make clear, some non-binary people will align more femininely or more masculinely, and they'll want to sort of maybe align with those sports of the sort of men's sports or women's sports based on how they wish to present in the world, even though they are non-binary. I myself am a non-binary person who presents more femininely, and so I would probably be, if I was in sports at all, be more likely to want to...
If you're a non-binary person, why do you take hormones? So you could develop breasts? And you are obviously, like, presenting yourself as female. Like, this is not non-binary. If I was 100 yards away, I'd be like, oh, look, there's a girl with broad shoulders. Come on, Jesse.
Play in a women's sports league. But that being said, the very idea of, like, me having to choose that, even though I present more femininely, kind of negates my non-binary identity in a lot of ways. But again, this goes back to the answer to this question is we should stop segregating sports by sex in general. Each sport should figure out a more specific way to separate their sport based on their own specific criteria, because even removing trans people from the equation, there are cis women in certain sports who would kick the butt out of some cis men. We saw that, for example, in the Battle of the Sexes in the tennis game. The top tennis player was able to beat one of the top men's players. I know there's some specifics about age and stuff within that as well, but like it just shows.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like all these other factors that actually led it to happening. And the guy was an alcoholic, and he was a piece of shit, and he was like twice the person's age. But it doesn't really matter. We don't need to talk about that.
Was that like men and women can beat each other regardless of whether they're trans or cis? So why not separate, like how boxing does, as I said before, on weight, for example, to allow people to sort of better compete against people who are more likely to be...
Yeah, I would love to see a 250-pound woman go in and box a 250-pound man. And you can tell me what the fucking difference is, Jesse. Give me a break. Come on.
Be closer to them in their competition class regardless of gender. Sex segregating sports makes sense on the surface because it's like an easy way to do it that we can sort of do wherever we want to and have enough people to do it. But ultimately, the reason trans people are so problematic to this discussion in a larger societal context isn't because we ruin sports. It's actually because having to include us forces all of us to reckon with the issues inherent in the system that already exist because we sex segregate. And so the answer isn't to discriminate against trans people. The answer is to try to fix the system to be more inclusive. But sadly, we don't always want to take the hard way that might be more inclusive. We sometimes want to take the easy way because that's the path of least resistance for most people, even though it harms and just targets people who are more vulnerable. And
what about everybody else that it harms? Like, it's just like it's not even argued. There's no substance to anything this person is saying. They haven't actually made an argument. It was 14 and a half minutes into this 19-minute video. Come on.
Also, all of this discussion has been focused on professional sports in this conversation that I've been having here, but the conversation in actuality, as it's been played out in sort of laws and discussions and news and things like that.
They always want to come for your kids. They always want to come for kids. They always do. This is what the end game is. I don't know. They're obsessed with it.
Has really been focused on trans women in student sports. And as I said before in my original video, when it comes to student sports, we should be teaching our kids not to see their transgender brothers and sisters and siblings not as others, but as part of their community, part of their group. To not say trans women are different and something that should be separated out, but trans women are women and should be allowed to play and consider comrades and teammates with their fellow women, cis or not.
Comrades. They should be like comrades. Another red flag. Jesse, gender.
We should let transgender people feel included and have equal access and opportunities to sports as any other kid. They deserve that. We shouldn't be teaching kids to see each other as something other that should be placed over there in some kind of fantastical transgender league that may or may not exist, but just that we are all part of the same community, even despite our surface differences. And finally, as I said in the initial video on this, the reason that this is an issue at all isn't really about asking these questions. It's about one that's being raised in order to use a surface level argument to galvanize us against each other. The right versus the left, and they're using trans people and trans ideology to try to harm the children and harm the kids, so you should vote for us or vote for the right, vote for the left, because we'll fix this issue, we'll fight for trans people.
People that make the argument that children have the mental capacity to make a decision like this are evil. Straight up. You're fucking evil, or you're stupid. That's also a possibility, you know? Don't always assume malice when maybe ignorance is the better course of action, I guess. But it's yeah.
Or a fight against these
I'm at a loss for
transgender
words.
ideology harming our children. It's just people in power using these arguments to make straw men versions of ourselves to just keep us fighting each other instead of actually.
Jesse, you literally are a straw man. You literally are a straw person. This is like a poster child. This video is you could show this to people across the nation and be like, wow, man, this is really fucking stupid.
Having the conversations that we need to have. In actuality, what we should be doing is coming together as a community to ask each other respectfully how we can fix this problem, how we can make it more inclusive for everybody, how we can make a community that includes everyone, that celebrates everyone, that enjoys everyone and loves.
No, it's, you know, Jams, I'm going to say a lot of it is stupidity. Like, a lot of these people are like fucking 22 years old and they come and make these grand proclamations about life and how people feel. Like, they don't even know they haven't even figured out their own bullshit. They haven't even figured it out. I'm 34 years old. I'm still figuring it out. Okay. And I got a lot of road behind me. I have a lot of life experience. I've done a lot of things. These people have, gone to college and they have just surrounded themselves with their fandom, and they just have no real tangible life experience. They don't have enough of actually going out. Like, imagine like having the idea in your head that like a 6-year-old could understand any of this. And then what that does to a child psychologically when you introduce these things to them. How confusing it is. They don't have the mental capacity to do it. To even conceptualize what these things mean. It's I know it's stupid, but it has an evil place that it will go, in my opinion.
Everyone in equal measure. And I feel like that's ultimately what we need to be talking about with this conversation. Not about laws and, some stupid political strawman argument, but about how we can all come together to just celebrate ourselves in the form of sports. All right, that's everything that I had for this discussion, but I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down below in the comments. What do you think about a transgender sports league? I'd love to hear all of that. Also, don't forget, as I said before, next week there will be no Monday or Wednesday video.
Okay, all right, that's enough, Jesse. That's enough. Oh, that was a video. God damn it, folks. Thanks for hanging in there with me, Chad. I appreciate it. It's just insanity. Like, it would have. I thought, like, I honestly, because I don't pre-watch these videos before I do them on stream. I thought that was going to be way more thoughtful. Oh, thanks for the follow. I really appreciate that. Jam says, yes, it is all evil. I agree, but more stupid than anything. No, and I agree with you. Like, I think that the ignorance factor, though, will create something that's incredibly damaging if it's allowed to kind of promulgate, in my opinion. The ideas in this video, like, they're not healthy. Oh, this is a smaller bread tuber, 65.4k subs. I like old,
Welcome to the
old zoo box. So what else does this person, what other videos has this person done? A lot of Star Trek video games. Cruel Texas bill that brands parents of trans kid child abusers. That's too long. I don't know if I could do another 20 minutes. I was hoping I'd find like a hot 10-minute video. It's not happening. It's not happening, guys. Anon says, when you are stupid, it keeps the door open for evil to propagate. Yes, I agree. And thanks a lot for the follow, Jams. I appreciate it. Whiplash81 says, Infowars.com. You are the resistance. Yeah, it like most bad things that happen, most bad things that develop in the world are a lot of times out of stupidity. Short-sightedness, I would say, is actually probably more apt. People just want immediate fixes for very complex problems, you know? Jam says, this is a good time to smoke a bowl. I don't disagree. So, what are we going to do here? Actually, speaking of Alex Jones, before we get into the next big thing we're going to do, we're going to watching this Lindsey Ellis video. So I completely understand if you guys peace out on that. But I would say, if you had a good time watching this Jesse Gender video, we're going to get a lot into the same kind of worldview. It's the same kind of person that we're going to be talking about. But before we do that, let's watch a fun video, just for shits and giggles. Also, give me a second here to readjust, pour a drink, get ready for the rest of the night. All right, here we go.
Is Alex Jones in the building?
You're gonna get in trouble now. You would have me on.
What is it? What is it?
Here's the deal. The demons show up. I can't control myself. Here, have a shot of whiskey.
I have look right here, dude.
No, drink it.
Alex Jones is my favorite meme.
You deserve it.
I'm good. I'm good.
Fucking suck.
Okay.
Yeah. This is kind of boring. Let's screw a dude.
That's kind of crazy, no?
Here's the deal. I'm like very homoerotic. I like it all, man. It's all pink in the middle. It's hot, hot.
What about Indian?
How pretty your green eyes are.
I don't know what's happening.
Let's get serious, my darling. Get over and sit in my lap.
What's going on? Are we still kidding?
Shut up. It's a very important ritual.
I'm out.
Watch out, though.
Oh.
They're going to get you. You know about Joe. Joe Rogan is secretly under that table right now.
What?
Like, somebody cut this together, like, you know, to be silly, to do this. But, like, the footage was there. Evil Hendrix Twins, Prophet says, I think Alex Jones is my favorite person on earth, and I have a wife and son. I agree. I've known about Alex Jones going way, way back. Probably, like, since the early 2000s. So, Alex is a trip. And I love, like, every 6 years, people are like, Alex Jones was right. He was right. Anyways, there we go. Now we're back in. I saw that earlier. I was like, that's actually very funny. It's actually a pretty funny video. All right, so now we're gonna get cynical. We're gonna be trying to make some YouTube dollars here, or putting something that I can maybe make $1 off on YouTube. Okay. So, Lindsey Ellis. Do people know who Lindsey Ellis is? Do we have to have a primer? Lindsey Ellis is an alum of this thing called Channel Awesome from back in the early 2010s. She used to be the nostalgia chick, and she has developed into kind of a feminist kind of culture critic. She got canceled on the internet a couple weeks ago for some really innocuous, dumb thing. And I don't like Lindsey Ellis, by the way. That's not what I'm saying. But she made a video kind of responding to all the drama and whatnot. And I've seen some of it. There's some interesting things to talk about, talking points for these kind of delusional people. Kind of like Jessie Gender, honestly. Kind of a very similar vibe. So we're going to see what happens. Having a good time. She explains a lot of who she is herself, so I don't have to go too much into it. There's one other video I got to grab. She makes reference to a video that we're going to make sure that we see when she makes reference to it, because she will not show it on there because she is deeply ashamed of it. All right. Let's roll. Roll right into it. There's the witch.
So last week, I was in a restaurant in North Carolina, and we were sitting at the bar, and the owner was sitting right there because they were about to close, and my mother starts talking to her, and somehow or other, the owner just looks at me, and she's like, well, what do you do? And, I wasn't about to tell her I'm a YouTuber, so I was like, I'm a writer. I mean, I am, technically.
Look how hip this person has got this Snoop Dogg candle. Very hip, very cool. Aliens over here. Although I don't like this hanging cord. This is unprofessional. You see any hanging cords? I don't think so.
And she's like, well, what do you do? So I told her my name, and she's like, I'm going to Google you. And I was like, okay, but I'm super canceled right now. And she laughed and clearly thought I was kidding, or maybe didn't know what that meant, or, knew it in some right-wing way. And then she Googled me and started laughing because the first thing in the questions people ask is, why is Lindsey Ellis canceled? And I mean, why indeed? But before I get
so cute Urban Outfitters bitch probably says, I loved her reviews of The Hobbit where I stared at her tits for 2 hours. I will say this, when she is just going in, meat and potatoes, story analysis stuff, she's not bad. I've watched Lindsey Ellis. I haven't watched her in years, really. I watched her thing about The Hobbit though, when she went to New Zealand and she was talking about the union busting and and how Warner Brothers was keeping a unionized effort out of the production of The Hobbit, and Peter Jackson having to deal with all that. But her actual just film analysis stuff is not awful. When she's just doing kind of the meat and potatoes, she's kind of transformed though. She's become an intersectionalist, so everything ends up having to be political, or having to be about race and gender and equality and. It's all this kind of projection. It's this postmodern idea of how we're supposed to treat literature and movies, even if they're from yesteryear. We have to take the modern paradigm of how we experience culture and apply it to things that are old, 200 years ago. And we're like, wow, we can't have this. We can't put things into context. It's very infantilizing, but she's definitely part of that. She's also a witchy woman. This is she got the Stevie Nicks vibe going on here. She actually reminds me of a girl that I used to kind of fool around with back when I was a teenager. Her name was Mary. She actually kind of reminds me of Mary.
Get into this, I need to lay some groundwork. Ladies and boomers of the jury, here you go. Canceling is a public shaming of a member of a community for some violation of that community's standards by other members of that community. But the term actually originated with a 1981 song called Your Love Is Cancelled by the band Chic. The song was inspired by a bad date guitarist Nile Richards went on at the height of the band's success, wherein his date behaved in a way that he felt was presumptuous and unacceptable. which really turned him off.
Okay, so I remember this. I kind of remember this. So she's talking about the, you know, the etymology of the term canceled, and she's going to totally make this about white people reappropriating something from black culture.
So basically it was
It's a nice
inspired by
song,
this
though.
idea: any potential future we might have had, any potential love that might have developed, canceled. The song was not a hit at the time, but it stuck around, and over the decades, the term, as used in the song, started appearing in other pieces of art and music, including in songs by rappers like 50 Cent and Lil Wayne, until eventually gaining popularity in the vernacular of Black Twitter. In this original vernacular use, declaring someone or something canceled was not really an attempt to, instigate a boycott or hold someone to account, but more of a personal decision, not unlike Chic's original song, canceling them in the television of your mind. So to cancel someone wasn't a call to deplatform, it was more just saying,
Take it easy, Anon. I appreciate you following, and we'll see you next time.
you stepped out of line, so I'm done with you. Like when the city of New York canceled Mayor de Blasio for eating pizza with a fork and knife. Which, to be fair, is the only reason to criticize the man. The connotation of this term with callouts and deplatforming didn't happen until a few years ago, as Me Too began and callouts did lead to some powerful people actually losing things. According to Washington Post writer Clyde McGrady, as callouts led to greater consequences, some people became nervous about how social media had changed power dynamics in the court of public opinion. Cancel culture was the diagnosis, and the term became a catch-all defense for those trying to evade public criticism of any kind. But now, cancel is just another word that white people have taken and run into the ground. So like woke before it, it has gone from AAVE vernacular to right-wing grievance.
What the fuck is AEV vernacular? Hold on.
Which is more or less where we are today.
Pretty quick.
Okay, I skipped over it. I'm trying to get back here.
And the term became a catch-all defense for those trying to evade public criticism of any kind. But now, cancel is just another word that white people have taken and run into the ground. So like woke before it, it has gone from AAVE.
African American Vernacular English. This is like another cunty Karen thing. White academia. Like she's trying to stand up for the African American vernacular and white people reappropriating their culture while being a complete asshole, condescending piece of shit. African American Vernacular in English. How does this square with the whole trans thing we just watched as well? Think about that. Think about the parallels between this idea of the segregationist type of idea, right? How that you could also apply that kind of same very concept to gender. Well, isn't it supposed to not matter? Shouldn't we just be allowed to just experience and do whatever? How does that square, Lindsay? I don't think you would have a good answer.
Vernacular to right-wing grievance buzzword, which is more or less where we are today.
Pretty quickly, and we are now seeing wokeism and diversity and inclusion. And
this is just the cancel culture, and I will tell you, the people at home should be scared because their ball game is next. Their business will be next. If it continues.
Hey, listen. Credit where credit's due. If she edited this herself, she's a good editor.
It won't just be Republicans who get canceled. It won't just be the President of the United States. The cancel culture will come for us all.
So I have a lot that I want to unpack here because I've had a bit of an ordeal that led to me realizing that I was bad for Twitter and Twitter was bad for me. And so I deleted my account. And for some dumb fucking reason, the fact that I deleted my Twitter account not only made actual news, my name was trending for several days. Is this another video about canceling? Or worse, the dreaded apology video? Do these people not realize I'm not a real celebrity? I'm the number 21.
So this is what happens anytime of these kinds of figures. A few months ago, was last year at some point, ContraPoints, famous, popular trans YouTuber, got very popular when they started to transition. Also made a video, a 2-hour video about cancel culture and about being canceled. This is their reflexive thing, oh, well, we really need to take inventory. We really need to discuss and understand. And while it's their own, user base, their own friend groups, their own in cliques that actually go after them. They're like they're like little den mothers, little hen pecking shit, whatever the term is. You know what I'm saying? Come on now, I got a captain's hat on.
1000th-ish most subscribed channel on YouTube, and I've published all of one book that only reached number 7 on the New York Times list.
Humble brag.
So we'll get into why in a minute, but like, I'm neither going to go full Andrew Cuomo, pew pew, I'm being canceled by multiple credible allegations. You're never going to be president, Andy. Or full crying apology video.
This is the kind of dumb bitch that would have been like all about Andrew Cuomo last year. Prophet says, henpecking like what my wife does? Yes. Yes, it is, Dan. Just like my wife, too. We all get pecked to death. On a long enough timeline, it comes for us all.
Though those do seem to be good for business.
And I just ask that you press pause for a moment and even just for 10 seconds, just cover this in prayer, because there is so much healing that needs to take place.
Cover it.
Some of the time. No, sir. I've decided to do the one thing Americans should.
You know, I've noticed a lot, too, where because they have, like, their master shot, because this is just obviously on her webcam or whatever, but they do these things where they do, like, the close, like, slightly closer up, and then before going back. There's got to be some sort of a psychological thing why they do that, because they all do that. The last Jesse Jenner, we watched that video, constantly doing that. I don't know if it's just I'm like hyper aware of it because I occasionally edit things, but yeah.
Never do, and vote third party. It's been a long time since we've done a list, hasn't it? So here we go. List. Part 1. Twitter is garbage. In the halcyon days of the early 2010s, Justine Sacco was a PR executive who traveled often for work, and not having many Twitter followers herself, often tweeted pitty little nothings, which on the morning of December 20th, 2013, as she was boarding a flight at Heathrow for a work trip, included this tweet: "Going to Africa. Hope I don't get AIDS. Just kidding. I'm white." Okay, so on its face, this is pretty inexcusable.
Why is it inexcusable? Like, it's a self-deprecating joke. It is a joke, literally, about about kind of, I guess you could say, like, it's not, it's the target is not black people with AIDS. It's like a parody. It's a satirical comment about, like, the privilege of being white. I don't got to worry about these things. It's actually not at all offensive or anything for anybody with half a brain. It's not.
Didn't take long for the tweet to catch the eye of Sam Biddle, then an editor at Gawker Media, who signal boosted it with a comment, "And now a funny holiday joke from IAC's new PR boss." The flight from Heathrow to Cape Town was 11 hours, and in that 11 hours, attention to this tweet spread like wildfire. Incredulity, horror, disgust, and also very quickly, glee, excitement.
Yeah, because a guy with a giant platform made it that way. Like some like piece of shit fucking tabloid douchebag decided to take this and then go after not just the person or what they said or the ideas, the dangerous ideas they're spreading, the jokes that they're making. No, it was to include where she worked and what her position was. It was completely malicious. It's not just something that happened. Oh, is this cute? The guy he wrote an article.
Sacco had less than 200 followers, and being on a plane with no internet, didn't...
Imagine that. Imagine being at a giant outlet like Gawker at the time, before the hoaxer got a hold of him. But imagine that. You see somebody with like 200 followers. That's less followers than I have. Okay? And you're just like, let's fuck up this person's life. Oh, what a privilege.
didn't know that she was Twitter's villain of the day, nor that she was one of the top trends worldwide. So there was a delicious irony to the fact that this woman had been canceled and didn't even know it. People had her flight number, tracked it obsessively, were just thrilled with this idea that she was going to land, and realized she had been found out. The hashtag #HasJustineLandedYet also began to trend. Someone even went to the Cape Town airport when she landed, took a picture of her, and shared it with the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's called creepy stalker behavior. It's not even that funny. I love that. Like, just every fucking moron with a 47 IQ suddenly their opinions are just elevated to the point where they're included in news articles. It's a whole industry of journalism now that's developed from shit like this. It's the people on Twitter are saying, and they write an article based on that, and then you go look at the people that they're talking about that are saying, which oftentimes will actually be just burner accounts that journalists create, but they have 4 or 5 followers. They're new accounts. Oh, it's crazy weird. But yeah, it's never anybody substantial. It's usually like 5 nobodies.
A few months later, upon being asked why it appealed to him, Sam Biddle said of the incident, "The fact that she was a PR chief made it delicious. It's satisfying to be able to say, okay, let's make a racist tweet by a senior IAC employee count this time. And it did. I'd do it again."
How fucking evil. Like, how high on his own supply was Sam Biddle writing this? Like, it's delicious. Okay, like a racist tweet. Has anybody illustrated why this tweet is racist? No, nothing that she's shown us, right? And neither has Sam Biddle. He just says it is. Therefore, it's really gross. It's fucked up. Fucked up.
But while people, of course, gleefully obsessed over the tweet, no one seems interested in why she said it or what she meant by it. No matter how you cut it, it's a bad look.
Because it was pretty clear. Like, you don't have to be a fucking rocket scientist to figure that out. And the idea that, like, Lindsey here is going to go through some sort of painstaking, slow analysis and break it down piece by piece, syllable by syllable, to explain why it's actually bad, but even though she didn't really mean it that way, like, it's not bad. It's just it's a throwaway joke. It's something that would have been seen on cable television in 2010 every night. Like, how is Daniel Tosh still around? Remember Tosh.0? Like, so that's a Daniel Tosh joke. It's not even that clever.
Look, it's a flagrant flaunting of privilege. So it's funny that she got fired, and I mean, I'm not gonna... She had it bad for a while. And, like, I don't want to speculate on exactly how ruined her life was.
Maybe you should have looked it up if you're going to talk about it, Lindsey. I don't want to speculate how bad it was when her entire world got fucking completely destroyed around her based on some dumb joke she made on Twitter. I don't want to speculate. I don't know, Lindsey. What do you think? Lindsey's insulated from all this shit. She works for herself. She's a writer, a YouTuber. Then she's got her little cadre of fucking commie bitches to come bring her ass back. I will not be canceled, y'all. It won't happen.
But it would also be reasonable to assume that this is a joke about white privilege, right? That it was bad and insensitive and made light of a terrible affliction that still kills thousands of people every day, but that she...
It took us this long to get here. To get to this conclusion. It took this fucking long.
Didn't mean it literally. And at the time, everyone involved seemed to think that of course she deserved to have her life ruined over it, even if they understood it was a joke about white privilege. Justine Sacco's family in South Africa were African National Congress supporters, the party of Nelson Mandela. They were longtime activists for...
Too bad, bitch. Too fucking bad. You said something that somebody took the wrong way. That's really what we're talking about. It's just some fucking some vulture. Sam Biddle, a vulture, decided to take advantage of. It's like such a non-story. But this is the hellacious times we live in.
for racial equality. So while I can't read her original intent, perhaps she felt worldly enough and enough in the club and enough of an ally that she could comfortably make such a joke. And
I don't think she thought that hard about it, Lindsay, because it's self-deprecating. It's the entire fucking point of the joke. There's nothing worse than explaining jokes, especially just on a gut level. We all knew what she meant. Come on.
that it would be understood. White people do this a lot, and I cannot say I am not guilty of this too. A year later, Sacco said to Jon Ronson, author of So You've Been Publicly Shamed, "To me it was so insane of a comment for anyone to make. I thought there was no way that anyone could possibly think it was literal. Living in America puts us in a bit of a bubble when it comes to what is going on in the third world. I was making fun of that bubble, while also conceding I had no business commenting on the epidemic in such a politically incorrect manner on such a public platform." Biddle got caught up in his own shitstorm when he tweeted the following in 2014. And you'll never guess who was mad on the internet in 2014. Ultimately, Gamergate is reaffirming what we've known to be true for decades. Nerds should be constantly shamed and degraded into submission. Then adding, "Bring back bullying." I was there, man. Bold of you to provoke them like that. Well, you can...
Oh yeah, she's just a soldier on the front lines of fucking people saying mean things about her on Twitter. These people are like she's like part of the group of people that created like the modern paradigm of like the victim class, especially when it comes to like social media and stuff like that. Like it is direct line to that era, the Gamergate era. It's a direct line because it was a bunch of fucking coddled, privileged, overeducated idiots basically decided that they were going to start feeding trolls for content, for money. It was a rule on the internet. You don't feed the trolls. You don't do it. That's what they want. It's a game. It's layered in irony. It's lots of stuff going on. And they just decided to start doing it, and then they acted like, what the fuck is going on? How could this be? How could they be making fun of me?
And guess what happened? There was a massive campaign against him, some from obvious bad faith right-wing trolls, but some who seemed to think that he literally was advocating for a return to the 1950s, where dumping books of dorky middle school...
So she'll give this guy all of this leeway, like all of this understanding, like obviously, like, oh, you know, he wasn't being literal. Well, yeah, nobody probably actually really thought he was being literal. I mean, there's probably, you know, like she said, bad actors and stuff, but the Justine Sacco thing, though, like, you're just like, oh, well, you know, I don't want to speculate as to her intentions, even though I just read an explanation of it.
Was de rigueur. Biddle publicly apologized to Sacco on the anniversary of her...
Good.
Well, it wasn't called canceling yet. A Twitter-wide dogpile, let's call it. Writing, "Twitter is a fast machine that almost begs for misunderstanding and misconstrual. Deliberate misreading is its lubricant. The same flatness of affect that can make it such a weird and funny place also makes it a tricky and dangerous one. Jokes are complicated, context is hard."
What a piece of shit. So he has it happen to him over something very innocuous, and he's just like, oh, wow, maybe I did something fucked up there. This is a grown-ass man. A grown-ass man had this opinion. Like, you know, I guess in some respect, you could be like, well, I'm happy you learned something. But at the same time, go fuck yourself. Damage done, buddy. Damage done. And he was not in a position where his life was going to be ruined because of people from Gamergate. Get fucked. Blah.
Rage is easy. By this point, they had actually become friends, and comparing their experiences, he said, structure...
That's like fucking Stockholm Syndrome. Becoming friends with your actual abuser? The source of your ruinous pain? Justine Sacco is probably a fucking moron. Ugh.
Actually, we had made the same sort of joke.
Actually, she should have sued him for defamation because she was not a public figure at fucking 200 followers on Twitter. I don't know if she tried, I can't remember, but I would have found somebody, be like, hey, Peter Thiel, you want to destroy Gawker? I got a case.
Here is what a truly horrible person, a person whose attitudes were entirely opposite from mine and those of the people who know me, would say. You could argue that hers was worse, conjuring a real and pernicious attitude that had resulted in systemic historical oppression and mass death, but the impulse was the same, and so were the reactions. So even though there's a disconnect...
So even though, like, he's just like, yeah, we're friends now, but I want to make it very clear that what we did was not the same. Adios, Prophet. Thanks for hanging in there, buddy. Things were not the same. Not the same at all.
Between the intended interpretation and the actual interpretation, there's also a disconnect between the severity of the crime and the gleeful savagery of the punishment. And this is not relegated to the early 2010s. It happens now more than ever. Twitter always has a villain of the day. Before me, it was Shrimp Bean Dad. I don't know. Something milkshake duck. God, am I a milkshake duck? I feel like I'm too old to be a milkshake duck. I've been around too long to be a milkshake duck, right? To a certain extent, the villain of the day almost follows a script.
Solidarity.
Especially now that we've all been losing our minds because we've all been inside for a year doing nothing but looking at our phones. Person says dumb thing, it gets some attention.
Actually, where's her mask? This is very irresponsible. She should be showing solidarity with the unvaccinated, the people that can't be in a room alone by themselves, and she should mask up. She should mask the fuck up. This is not right.
Person gets defensive. The defensiveness spurns outrage. People start coming out with receipts. The OP deletes their account. And Twitter is garbage because the user experience, UX as they call it in the industry, is designed to encourage this kind of behavior. It's engagement, fast and emotional and satisfying, and easily forgotten. Communication through Twitter often happens through shorthand, micro-interactions that fit a limited number of predetermined narratives and scripts because you're exposed to thousands of these per day, which is why we have these Twitter script phrases such as, wow, this blew up, friendly reminder, casual reminder.
See, this is where she shows her skill, because she can succinctly kind of like elucidate something like this. She's actually giving you a good explainer of the nature of Twitter. But she's also blind to other aspects of it. Like, she only feels this way in context to herself and her experience. Like, it's this lack of empathy. It's this lack of, like, understanding other people that feel differently than you also experience these bad things, right?
Mask off. I don't know who needs to hear this, but thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Should have stayed in the drafts. Read the room. I'm trying to see something. I'll just leave this.
It's like
here.
the song of my
Asking
people.
for a friend.
Captains.
Send tweet. The list goes on. And the way it provokes rage and dog piles is baked into the way the very platform itself is designed. Twitter as a company has a really big problem where outside of its user base, its reputation is quite bad, and it hasn't really seen an increase in active users in years. When a site hits its peak in terms of total active accounts, there is still capitalist pressure to increase value and profit. A shrinking pool of eyes plus a need to increase revenue equals a service that needs to squeeze more blood from the same stones. So every UX decision is geared towards increasing time spent with eyes on the screen. That's why they've developed non-chronological timelines, tweets that get added to your feed by virtue of other people liking them, goddamn fucking quote tweets, and so on. Twitter is designed quite literally to be addictive. They aren't getting new users, so they have to keep the ones who are there from logging off.
Like, she feels the need to explain all of these kind of very, like, obvious apparent things. I suppose maybe because, you know, she's building her case for herself. There's a selfishness to this that is bothersome to me because it is exclusively just about herself. But she's framing it in the sense of, well, I'm talking about culture and I'm talking about the nature of the platform. I'm talking about the kinds of people that are affected by this, but like, no, not really. You're kind of just talking about yourself. And if you want to do that, that's fine, but don't kind of couch it in this idea that you're doing something kind of noble. I'm giving a noble explainer. For all you normies out there, no fucking normies watch goddamn Lindsey Ellis. I'd be very surprised. You think there's a bunch of grandmas out there being like, oh, can't wait for the next Lindsey Ellis review to drop? Can't wait. She talks about cats again.
Twitter wants you to post, and it wants you to boost, and it wants you to engage, so it will put as few barriers between the user and engagement action as possible. So with all that in mind, it's no wonder that among the many pre-written shorthand Twitter scripts, Twitter's villain of the day is even a thing, and that it's a common truism on Twitter that the only goal is not to become the villain of the day. The unspoken understanding that it can be anyone if they're not careful.
It'll happen to you. No way, man. We're gonna keep on rocking forever. 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 Forever.
Engagement is often driven by outrage, and so we have this combination of high emotionality with a desire to perform. Social media is designed to manipulate our desire for approval, and a part of that these days is the desire to perform allyship. White people in particular all want to be told they're one of the good ones, which is why people like Justine Sacco gain such attention in the first place. In a fundamentally unjust world, it's satisfying to take a cosseted bigot down a peg. So if we can only get one more wrong-headed, bigoted head on a pike, humiliate one more blackface stewer or one more appropriative food blogger, we could heal this world. And inevitably, it was my turn. Cannot shut the fuck up on Twitter. On Friday, March 26th, 2021.
Like, she just casually mentions the appropriative food bloggers. People that talk about food from other countries. Yeah, it just happens. These are things that just happen. She's not even kind of like getting into the like kind of the disgusting moral implications of all this. She's just like, well, you know, this is the nature of Twitter. I've just explained it to you. These are the things that happens. It's just part of life on Twitter. Just part of life in general now. So basically you have to self-censor and cut yourself off from avenues of public discourse if you want to be treated fairly, because you might be headhunted by psychopaths.
I was Twitter's villain of the day. So, for those of you who haven't yet seen my offending tweet, let's have it. My Justine Sacco moment. Are you ready to see why mommy's canceled? Also, watched Raya and the Last Dragon, and I think we need to come up with a name for this genre that is basically Avatar the Last Airbender reduxes. It's like half of all YA.
Yeah, this is what she does mostly is talk about young YA things, cartoons, Disney movies, but she does it for an audience of like 30-year-olds. That's her back. She's been doing this for a decade. Good for her. She's stuck in there, you know?
Fantasy published in the last few years anyway. That's it. That's the tweet. So I imagine some of you are very confused. Part 2, valid criticism. So from what I can tell, the whole thing originated when some Southeast Asian artists and animators read the tweet as being dismissive and reductive and implying all Asian-inspired things are the same genre. And to me, it was made even more frustrating by the fact that several of the people who started this hadn't even seen the movie. In fact, most people who were getting involved with this conversation hadn't even seen the Dragon movie. Looks like no one saw the Dragon movie. But here's the thing, I kind of had my own has Justine landed yet experience by popping off the tweet, reading a few responses who understood what I was getting at, going to bed, and it blew up while I was asleep. Hashtag has Lindsey woken up yet? And because by the time I woke up, I'd already gotten a few like, oh my god, are you okay? Messages from friends before I even opened Twitter. By the time I looked at my timeline, I saw very little that I would consider valid criticism. So I feel like I need to establish...
Yeah, but isn't everything valid in your worldview, Lindsey? Like, how does she demarcate what is valid and what isn't? Because to me, any criticism of that is just like, it's just bad faith, willful ignorance, projection. Like, what is it? What is it? You're just making a comparison between like animation styles, the types of stories that are told. Because Avatar: The Last Airbender, very popular, kind of created a roadmap for a lot of things that came out in the decades since. And recognizing that, like, in any way, considering that like a problematic thing. But I have a feeling Lindsey's just gonna eat shit. She's gonna be like, no, I can see why. Why would you even give it that? Like, why wouldn't you just be like, no, fuck off. Fuck off. You're an idiot. You're a child. Lindsay's like my age. We're too old for this, Lindsay. Too goddamn old.
That this whole thing stopped being about valid criticism very, very quickly. And I'll talk about that later in the video. But by the time I woke up, it had already blown way past this is a careless display of white privilege to this sort of thing is a contributing factor to the mass murder of Asian women that just happened.
She literally loaded the gun for that guy. That Atlanta guy, she loaded the gun. She did it. Lindsey Ellis. I'm sorry, you cannot deny this interpretation of your tweets. I'm sorry, you've partaken in a culture. Now, she's not, of course not, she's not going to say that. But the problem with Lindsey Ellis acting this way about this, Lindsey Ellis, for years, has done this same shit to other people. And she will do it throughout this video, from what I recall. I had it on in the background the other day when I was doing stuff. But she will like make these bad faith assertions about other people and their intentions. So I guess you get what you fucking deserve. Joker quote.
So this is what we call an overstatement of harm. It had gone from possible insensitive microaggression from a C-list YouTuber to contributing to hate crimes. And that didn't feel like anything I would consider valid. So it's, early in the morning, I just woke up and I responded with frustration because I was being ascribed an intentionality which was not there, which, well, if anyone who spent any time on Twitter can tell you, getting defensive and doubling down is about the last thing anyone should do, so that was an oopsie. And I tried to give, some credence to...
I mean, the platform itself it's not worth your breath. If she had never addressed it and just fucking went on with her life, none of this happens. None of this, it doesn't keep there's no more permutations of this process. But the idea that you're well, you should never defend yourself on Twitter. You should never try to either explain or reestablish or say, hey, go fuck yourself, is because of the politics of the political nature, the quote unquote political nature of what she said, right? Because she referenced two things that have to do with Asian animation and Asian stories. The idea that you're not allowed to just be no, go fuck yourself. And if she had left it there, that's probably all that happens. It probably doesn't actually develop into anything bigger than that. That's the key to all this stuff. When you're getting canceled, is that you just say, go fuck yourself. And you just shut up after that. That's really all you can do. But these cowards, they're just no, this is just part of it because sometimes it's valid. Sometimes it's needed to destroy people based on jokes and things. Because they could be Nazi light Nazis, whatever the fuck she's going to say later. But yeah, so she can't condemn it because she's also kind of a part of it. So she can't just have a hard, no, this is wrong. This is stupid. What you're saying is stupid. Clearly that's not my intention. And I don't believe that you thought it was.
To the valid criticism by saying if
okay, I can see where if you squint, I was implying all Asian inspired properties are the same, especially if you were already privy to those conversations where I had not seen them. But the basic framework of what the TLA, which I believe is that Raya of the Last Dragon, TLA is becoming popular in fantasy fiction outside of Asian inspired stuff. Perfectly fine statement.
If you squint, I can kind of see what you're saying, and...
If you squint, Lindsay, if you do Asian eyes, disgusting.
God damn it. It was early. You shouldn't tweet in the morning. No, you shouldn't tweet at all. You shouldn't tweet. Nobody should tweet. So that very poorly worded frustration was met with even more outrage that I was not taking in to be valid critique of people.
Because she said the word squint? Do you think it's because she said squint? Is that why the hammer fell on her? Do you think so? Seems like that was the implication. These seem like pretty round eyes. Shouldn't be talking about squinting people, Lindsay. Got those white people eyes.
POC when I am too busy being bowled down by mountains of hyperbole. And this word racist over and over and over, which is bound to make anyone a little bit defensive. So
No shit. No shit. When you start, you think when you paint people as racists, people get defensive? Oh, no way. I wonder why. I wonder why people don't like to be tarred and feathered with that label. Like Lindsey Ellis is a person that does this to people all the time, or did. Spoiler alert. She's no longer really going to use Twitter. She's too big now. But that's neither here nor there. She's just, she was part of that. She's part of this developing culture. You know, she's one of these like originators of this shit. And she got a little, she's had it, and this has happened to her a few times. And always for dumb reasons. And she can't just say like, no, it's stupid. Go fuck yourself. She just can't do it. She has to be like, oh, well, it's just more nuanced than that. It's like based on like relative to what she said, there is no deeper nuance that really kind of changes anything. But I guess, you know, you reap what you sow, as somebody's mom probably said.
So when all of these things are coming at you, it's impossible to genuinely consider actually valid critique in a timely fashion, because your defenses are at 100. And when I'm being accused by hundreds of people of contributing to anti-Asian American hate crimes by saying that the Disney thing reminded me of the Nickelodeon thing, it's honestly kind of stunning to me that any reasonable person would expect someone in my position to take in all of these hundreds of tweets, process them reasonably, and within minutes be like, yes, I see your point, reasonable ones, because I am able to parse you out from the people saying I'm responsible for hate crimes. Now, before we go forward, it must be acknowledged that being any person of color in the United States right now is just to be constantly worn down in a million tiny ways every day, all the time, by a society that is low-key shitty. High-key shitty. It's shitty. These critiques don't come from nothing, and there are issues both in the film industry and the culture at large that is making people hyper-vigilant.
So even if you felt that way, like she feels the need to broaden the context out, like, oh, well, you know, some of these people just weren't wrong. No, it's okay, Lindsay, to say like, no, you're wrong. Like what you're doing is abusive. What you're doing is, which is kind of like fucked up. It's okay to say that. It's okay to say that. Like it didn't need extra like explanation. It didn't. And she can't even like bring herself to, she's like, oh yeah, the world is so hard. And I can understand why, you know, people of color like would be like really fucking on edge and too fucking stupid to be able to read my tweet like correctly and understand the context of who I am. You know, people are just fucking stupid, I guess. Is that what you're saying, Lindsay? No, I don't think you are. See, that's being uncharitable. That's being a Twitter head. But come on, man.
I'm not going to follow that with a however. I just want to lay that groundwork and acknowledge that.
Yeah, see, she just needs to signal it to people. There's nothing else to say. No, I'm just going to say this in a blanket statement. Like, there's no way I could have constructed this argument without including that. I just have to say it because you guys got to know that, like, I know. It's hard. It's like fucking condescending. The bigotry of low expectations. Yeah, you guys got it so hard. How could you ever understand? How could you ever be expected not to just react like an asshole to this very innocuous thing I said?
Part 3. White nonsense.
Here
I know
we
that's not the
go.
most PC way of saying that, but I have many, many white friends, so.
Yeah, but she knows that she totally gets away with it because you could never say black nonsense. And you couldn't make the joke she's about to make about having many, many black friends, and that's why it's okay. No, there's no cultural risk in saying white nonsense, and to even address it as if there is, or that's it's not politically correct. You know, nobody gives a fuck. It's just another opportunity just to put yourself up there on that giant pedestal, that cool, virtuous white person pedestal. You are a Karen above all others, and you are not like the other Karens. Because you understand the struggle. You get it, Lindsey.
I'm allowed to say that. So in the case of this tweet, I went to bed, morning on the East Coast, and, there was some discourse by people who, had some valid upset, and the nations all lived together in harmony until the whites attacked. Because a common refrain of these valid criticisms were that I was ignoring POC voices and
So this is a whole diatribe. I have a sense memory of this. She's going to go into like saying like, oh, well, most of the people that were criticizing me were white. So that makes their dumb, insipid, pedantic things they say invalid. You don't even have to racialize it. You can just be like, anybody that says the kinds of things she's going to bring up, regardless, sex, creed, religion, skin tone, also doesn't matter, is also stupid. But of course, she's got to be the woke white lady, the fucking Stevie Nicks vibes. Come down here to Stevie Nicks tacos.
Talking over POC voices. But the vast, vast majority of the avalanche of angry I was getting was from white people. Not all.
Were they good arguments or bad arguments? I guess that's really the only thing that matters. Also, probably if white people, demographically speaking, are the majority, that's the demographic that's going to be talking to you about any subject the most. So it kind of doesn't matter.
But definitely, at least in terms of the extremely hyperbolic ones, this is the majority. White people.
I just can't.
Come here. We need to have a chat. I think maybe we need to admit that those of us on the progressive side of the fence, as it were, are feeling kind of under pressure these days. We are horrified by the racial injustice of the world, especially in the US. We feel the need to perform.
Especially in the US. Go fucking look at what's going on in the rest of the fucking world, you idiot. You fucking moron. While you lap up these fucking Disney movies which started all this shit, look what they're involved in. What did you think of Mulan? Oh, I didn't like Mulan, but we watched it. We never brought up the fact that, oh shit, fucking almost 1 million people in internment camps enslaved, having being genocided, culturally genocided. Their kids are stolen from them. They're put in indoctrination camps. Oh, but we got it real bad here, guys. We got it real fucking bad here. Come on, Lindsey. Why you gotta be such a dumb Karen? This is the thing that's frustrating. I politically probably never agree with Lindsey, but Lindsey is not a stupid person. She's not. And when she goes into these things, this is performative. This is virtue signaling, if you will. It's not, it's disingenuous. And you can feel it, and you know it. Because of the absurdity of the entire situation. It's like Kafkaesque. It's like a Kafka trap. Why are you in trouble? I don't understand. Doesn't matter. Come with us. Where are we going? We're going to the trial. We're going to see the judge. But what have I done? The judge will tell you.
Action, but aren't really presented with very many opportunities to do so. My friend and PBS co-host Princess Weeks remarked during another stupider Twitter thing that happened a few weeks prior about fan fiction ethics. Actually, it's about ethics in fan fiction.
Only a dumb bee like Lindsey would think that's funny. It's a Gamergate reference because they say, oh, it's about ethics in games journalism. And she just included herself in that. She's not a games journalist, by the way. But she just included herself in that back in the day. So she's like, I was there. I was part of it. Soldier in the trenches of Twitter. My phalanges. Oh, they were working so hard. Oh, I got these evil Gamergators trying to fight my friend with the hoop earrings.
It deeply amuses me when people treat shipping, pro and anti, with so much political importance when they literally apply that to nothing else, and to remove all nuance and context, to share fake quotes and facts, to perpetuate harm in order to own people over the right for two white people to kiss. When you marginalize really queer BIPOC and marginalized people, for what? In other words, often white progressives cite black voices when in service of your, well, in this case, ship. Yeah, it was Hannibal or oh my god, this is so stupid. You're interested in black voices when it's in the service of pwning another white person or white creator whomst you disagree with, but show little interest for issues or advocacy that actually concern black voices and—
Oh, so you're all racist. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you for telling us the real game. Black people are pawns in your little weird ideological games you play, even when with cartoons. You're all just dumb pieces of shit. Thank you so much for just elucidating that, admitting that too. Pretty bold of her, actually. If you really think about it, let's give Lindsay a round of applause. You're just a bunch of dumb fucking racists. No, that you just weaponize other psychotic people when it suits your needs. Well.
In their community, independent of said pwnage, only to immediately be told you're not a real queer little girl, you privileged little twat, by a white lady about 15 minutes later. To be clear, this discussion was about fan fiction. This was about pretend people kissing.
Yeah. Important stuff, Lindsay. Almost like what your whole situation is. Like, pretend Asian culture from Avatar The Last Airbender and Raya the Last Dragon. It's all pretend. Lady, come on.
Pretendly. So I saw a lot of mealy-mouthed smug nothing about do better and listen to POC. Always listen to POC. Why aren't you listening to POC?
Always.
Elevate POC voices.
You got to.
Always.
You got to.
Okay. Whomst. Whomst is the valid person of color, oh allies of the jury, because I did listen to a lot of POC, both in public and in private, and I got it.
Like, whenever I hear the term POC, it just makes me think it's like a woke white lady slur. It's like, well, not white lady specifically, but it's like a intelligentsia slur. So wait, it's like otherize people, be like, oh, you're a POC. I gotta listen to the POC voices. What happens when they don't agree with you? Do you just fucking just fold? Be like, well, I guess you must be right. I guess I am a piece of shit. Raya the Last Dragon, great movie. 10 out of 10 stars. Would watch again.
Gotta tell ya, there's a diversity of opinions, almost like people of color aren't a monolith. Marginalized.
Oh my god. Did you hear these fucking talking points? That's some racist. That's like some Richard Spencer shit. What is she, Dave Rubin? Some Dave Rubin shit, dog.
Because I did listen to a lot of POC,
Hear it again.
Both in public and in private, and I gotta tell ya, there's a diversity of opinions, almost like people of color aren't a monolith.
What a racist. What a racist. Can you even believe what she's saying? Oh my god. Is she a Republican? Is this Ted Cruz? Am I being goofed right now? Is this Ted Cruz?
Marginalized communities are not without diversity or conflict, so treating it as such is totally reductive and ignoring other POC voices by centering the loudest or angriest as the most authoritative.
See, this is the same shit. This is exactly what somebody like Lindsey Ellis would be fucking bullshit about if somebody else that was not of her ideological persuasion said about a topic. Like, she would be out of her fucking mind. How dare you? Oh, you're not listening. You're not listening to the right people.
A problem only compounded by the way Twitter is designed, which I have already argued is bad. As I was going back and forth over the timeline and everything that had happened, I found this private message from fellow YouTuber who I have to disclose is half Vietnamese because this is irrelevant. And he said, "I'm trying not to say anything I'm going to regret here, but I have very little respect for the people dogpiling me and mine in the defense of a typically derivative corporate product from the biggest media company in the West because 2 of its 7 writers and 0 of its directors were Asian." This in private, of course, because, he didn't want to get harassed. Privileged twat. So I find the listen to...
See, that's a little joke. If you know the deep lore, Lindsey Ellis used to date Todd in the Shadows. Todd in the Shadows, another Channel Awesome alum, used to do music reviews. He's a creepy little fat Asian dude that wear a mask all the time and analyze music. He was kind of weird. Probably still is, for all I know. I don't know. I'm just talking about his public persona. You could say the same thing about me. If you want to say I'm weird, fair enough. Fair game. I do wear a captain's hat.
The POC refrain, because it's only trotted out in the service of white people poning other white people. Very revealing, because what they mean is listen to the POC we can use to pwn someone else. But the POC we don't agree with? Privileged twat. But note this hilarious exchange between 2 white people arguing over my Raya tweet. When pressed on what exactly it is I need to admit wrongdoing for, this woman says, "Again, you're just another white woman talking over actual POC concerns." I love this exchange because this person, one of the shit billion white people mindlessly...
That's a Lindsey Ellis response. That's the same kind of things. Like I said, I've known about Lindsey Ellis for going on a decade. I followed her on Twitter. For some reason. I follow a lot of people. But that's the kind of thing she would say to somebody else. So for her to suddenly take exception with it and be like, wow, the deep analysis, look at these white people. You are one of those people, Lindsey. You have propagated this kind of behavior. I'm glad you're off Twitter, because you're a problem.
Regurgitating this listen to POC shorthand, the very same person who called Princess a privileged twat. You're not a real queer little girl. Princess's Law in action. There's this incredibly childish dichotomy with the way a lot of people discuss racism, that there are the racists and the non-racists. The 2 genders, and the way to solve racism is to root out the racists and cast them onto Racist Island, away from me and mine, the non-racists, one of the good ones. They do this because they are insecure about their own internalized racism. They cannot conceive that they have any. That thought is terrifying to them because a racist is the worst thing you can be. So instead of doing any
See how they've diluted the concept of racist? It's well, everybody's racist, so it's actually not that bad. And the term, you shouldn't be uncomfortable with the term, even though she had suggested that she was uncomfortable with the term before. But she's about, and people calling her racist, right? She didn't like that. It made her defensive. But now she's making the argument that you have internalized racism and you're a racist no matter what you do, and just kind of accept that and understand that. And, it's not the worst thing in the world. There's not just racist people and not racist people. It's no, everybody's a little racist. All white people are racist. I wonder if she would think her friend Princess Weeks is. Do you think that person has internalized racism? I'd like to hear a comment. Who in Lindsey's life has internalized racism? Is it all her white friends? It's just a despicable, divisive attitude. And these people have jumped into so many mental gymnastics that you're all up in knots, right? Just bad people. That's just tiresome. Tiresome.
Inspection, they remain hypervigilant to root out the secret bad people, so everyone else will know they're one of the good ones.
She's already done this in this video. This is the crazy thing about this. The cognitive dissonance. She has already gone through this process in this video. of doing that. I am not a bad one. I understand the struggle. I understand what's going on in the world. I'm not like these other people. Fucking Stevie Nicks over here.
Racism is a complex system upheld from all wings of our society, from laws to hiring practices to generational wealth to community redlining to internal biases to individual actions.
She just says all of these things without having any fucking thought to like how any of that could practically operate. They're just buzzwords to her. They're just things you say to sound informed. Like you know what's going on. I don't know. Maybe this is the world that she lives in. You know, the super privileged, Stevie Nicks looking, non-binary, bisexual, witchy woman. You know, maybe that's the world she. Maybe that's how she experiences life. You know, let's be fair.
We live in a white supremacist society. When you live in a pig pen, you're gonna get covered in shit. And all of
a white supremacist society. Yeah, a lot of that going around. A lot of white supremacy happening right before our very eyes. At every second, at every moment, even though culture is completely shifted and everything in popular culture is like completely not in line with that, hasn't been for 40, 50 years. No, let's not give credit to any progress that we've made. Lindsey Ellis is like the kind of fucking idiot. Look at the surprised face she has. She'd be surprised to hear this. The kind of fucking moron that thinks that like life is as it was in 1954. Like we've never progressed. We've never come. We haven't made great strides. People like this are the enemies of progress. They're the enemies of progress. If you can't know where you've come from, if you can't tell the difference, and you still act as if it is the same as it's always been that way, no credit is given to anyone, then you are going to drag us back there, you dumb little harpy. Like, this is not normal. This is not okay behavior. And I don't like it. I don't like it.
All of us have the stink on us. And I don't just mean the whites. All of you. Blocked, blocked, blocked. None of you are free from sin.
Holy shit, did you see that? That's like Hitler talking to me right now. I'm not just talking about the whites. Blocked, blocked, blocked. If only she would have just listened.
But especially the whites. And yet people still have...
And there you go. There it is.
...have this like, I'll be the racist dragon attitude about how racism works.
Why are you crying so? I'm crying because all of those horrible villagers chased me into the scary cave. I think it's because I'm so racist. Get your hand off my tail, you'll make it dirty.
Racism isn't a system perpetuated by many, many things.
That's the funniest thing that's been in this fucking video. I like to know that Lindsey Ellis does the same thing that I do, where it's just like you rip low quality videos off of YouTube to edit them into your dissertations.
Including actions, but a character trait, a disease that people try to hide from the world because they know if they're found out, they'll get banished to racist island.
I wonder why people feel that way, Lindsay. Why do you think people feel that way? Could it be, I don't know, the vulturous, piranha-like nature of the social paradigm people like you have created? Why would people feel that way? They're just waiting to be found out to be racist. No matter what they do. The list, it comes for us all.
And suddenly, he wasn't racist anymore.
While there are still, of course, racist hate crimes and the like, most general displays of racism don't come out of grand, cross-burning style gestures, but out of ignorance, carelessness, or negligence. And for white people, a lot of it is just the reality of benefiting from a system designed to privilege you. So I'm not going to waste my breath on...
No, Lindsay, that's people like you. People that grew up the way you grew up, with actual privilege and going to film school and being able to live in New York City. I wonder who was paying for that before you made it. I wonder who was helping you get by. It is not the experience of the vast majority of human beings, much less like white or black people. And that's the thing with these pundits. They live such fucking touched lives. And they just project that onto everyone. Everyone must feel like this. Everyone must have felt like this. It must be just the way it is. Because I feel this way. This was how my life was. Like, it's such a limited perspective. It's just insidious in some sort of broad sense. It's just fucking annoying.
On the I'm not a racist line of defense. I'm a white woman from Tennessee. My family is mostly uneducated white trash. I'm not gonna be like, yeah, I didn't internalize any of...
What do you think? Do you think she would say that about her other friends? About Princess Weeks? Do you think she would say that about any other race of people? Like, oh yeah, their families were from trash as well. They're from the ghetto. So that's, they just are comfortable with violence. And that's just the way of life. Of course, like, some of my black friends that I went to school with, of course, they're just like a proclivity for violence because of where they were raised, Fucking nonsense.
That I'm special. I shot out of the womb unscathed. We all have the stink on us. Yes. Even you. The reason I bring this up is because another thing that happened after that tweet was the sharing of the receipts. Thousands of people passing around screen caps of tweets and videos and blog entries and anecdotes from my personal life, proving that this was not just a one-off. Oh no, I have a long history. It was high time I was banished to Racist Island. And it's true, I do have a long history of being on the internet. Longer than pretty much all of you, statistically, probably. And there is a list of sins floating around Twitter, carefully and obsessively curated over a period of 13 years. Amazing. Is it because there's a pandemic? Where do you guys get all this free time? So I've been accused of a lot of terrible things and remanded for never owning up to my mistakes. Well, today is your day, receipt keepers. You guys have worked so hard on this, so I am going to give you what you asked for. Finally, all that hard work, meticulously combing through every word I've ever said is gonna pay off. Well, that's what you wanted, wasn't it? Part 4. My list of sins. You weren't prepared for this to turn into a drama channel, were you? Yeah, maybe you were. I mean, this is just what happens when they break your spirit utterly. So, a big part of my, self-preservation strategy over the years is to explain myself as little as possible, because, if you do that, it's already a losing game, and rarely, if ever, talk about my personal life. Clearly, a big mistake on my part. Well, today, we are turning the page. We are spilling the tea. The whiskey. I mean, I knew I was saving this for a special occasion. I mean, technically...
I want to try that stuff, but it's pretty expensive. Another case of Lindsey Ellis privilege. Pasty Stevie Nicks white lady privilege. Being able to get writer's tears whiskey.
Yeah, whatever. Got my Decep. I haven't used this one in a while. Oh god. Yeah, I really haven't used this in a while. So, take a shot every time Lindsey Ellis does a problematic. So a common refrain during that weekend where I was trending was, Party A says, Lindsey did a racism. And Party B's like, well, what did she do? And Party A would show the tweet, and Party B would be like, I don't get it. This doesn't seem like a big deal. And then Party A would be like, ah, no, she has a long history of problematic. And Party B is like, I get it now. And then they...
Party B, is she trying to say like Cardi B? Is this another one of these kind of dog whistles that we have to deal with so often? Listen, I'm sorry. If you're a POC in the audience, I'm sorry that she's doing this, but I think it's important that we experience it together, that we work through it, that we get as far in this video as we can, because I think you really need to know, really need to feel it, you know? I think you really need to know.
Skip off together into the sunset. Twitter user Dragon Lady Celeste Sparkle has conveniently collated my long storied history of all my other sins that explain why the Raya thing was just a mask-off moment, and I deserve this, actually. A very good and normal thing to do with your finite minutes on this earth.
Yeah, because you're a giant high-profile person in that world. Like people, like Lindsey Ellis is the kind of person that's like, oh, I'll fire off an opinion, I'll fire off a thing, but you know, don't if you kind of come at me for it, well, you shouldn't do that because I'm not famous. Well, to those people, you are famous. It's not really that obsessive. Like Lindsey Ellis would do this to a much more high-profile person relative to her. It's literally what she does. She does cultural analysis. You're just kind of having your own soup served to you in some respect. But I do agree, it's kind of creepy.
Take down that YouTuber. Take her down. Literally.
She has almost 2 million subs, I think. I know she has over 1 million. So it's not like, yo, just some random YouTuber. Just some...
All day, people have been replying to my tweet with more and more examples of truly harmful rhetoric that Ellie has been pushing for a while. And all I can say is, how the fuck has she not been called out on a mass scale before? Well, Dragon Sparkle Celeste, she has. She just never deleted her Twitter account before. Actually, no, that's not true. Last time I deleted my Twitter account, I didn't trend because I guess I wasn't, you know, number 21,000 on subscribed YouTube channel by that point. But the last time I deleted my account, it was because of the, you know, white genocide crowd. So I guess that's something you have in common. I don't get why I'm like so hated by both sides of the political fence. I don't think I'm like interesting enough to like gather this much attention or emotion. I drive a Honda Civic, like Jesus. So thank you for compiling it in one convenient thread. Makes my job easier. Now the problem with this not at all creepy and obsessive list of every single one of my perceived transgressions over a period of 13 years...
See, this is the thing. Like, it's not like... Is it creepy in a certain respect? Sure, I guess. You know, you could look at it that. But, like, Lindsey Ellis isn't a nobody, and she's been around for a decade. Is there some autistic person, like, collating all these things and cataloging them? Probably. But this is the kind of shit that she does on the reg about other people and other creators and writers and filmmakers and even Peter Jackson himself. Yeah, nobody likes The Hobbit. Okay, The Hobbit's a disappointment, but she went after him personally and his worldview, his integrity as an artist. Because he was forced to like play ball with Warner Brothers during a very contentious time. But she didn't. She had the knives out. So this idea that you're like, oh, I'm so surprised. I'm so surprised that other people would do the same thing to me. It's all fucking relative, Lindsay, and you know it. You know it.
Is that it does not include the times when I have addressed them. But, you know, I'm sure they just, you know, forgot to screen cap those tweets / blog posts / streams / videos, etc., you know, because this list is in such good faith.
Oh my God, being attacked in bad faith, Lindsay, like, holy shit. You know, if anything, I would say on a positive note, a possibly positive note, I hope this has changed her perception a little bit about the nature of just kind of hurling shit like this at people ad nauseum. I don't think it probably hasn't, but a man can hope. A simple captain, simple riverboat captain, a simple simp can hope, you know?
Nor does it incorporate any of my entire body of work, which, I don't know, doesn't count apparently because, you know, the list of sins is the real me. And the other stuff I do is, I don't know, for profit or something. So there's like a jillion of these grievances, and, you know, this video is already like 12 eternities long. So believe it or not, what I am about to address is non-comprehensive, because there are a lot of people who were really, really dedicated to, you know, mask off. And credit to where it's due, this was spearheaded by the, you know, leftist Twitter. But again, a lot of these receipts originated with the right wing. I don't even want to call them all.
Like, the right wing. A lot of these tweets originate with the right wing. It's like, no, bitch. Like, you people eat each other. The right wing. She has no fucking idea. She just assumes. Even though she has just spent a half hour basically saying that the left eats its own. They're just doing it in bad faith. Everybody does it in bad faith. So she doesn't know. But now she wants to... This is where we're starting kind of building this narrative of a victim's that I'm being attacked because of where I am politically. Now, you said something very innocuous, and your audience are fucking morons. Hagbird, who is she? She is a YouTuber that got canceled for saying something very dumb. Well, actually, not saying something dumb, but saying something that her dumb audience found controversial.
Right, you know, because they're not that principled. You know, like more like, you know, Gamergate refugees, the 4chan for the lulz crowd, diet Nazis, let's call them. So some
diet Nazis, like, yeah, if you're somebody that likes to goof on dumb idiots like you, Lindsay, oh, they must be Nazis.
Some of this is, as many of you have noted, extremely bad faith interpretations of statements which only make sense if you are working backwards from a foregone conclusion. That said, I don't want this to be taken as me saying that I have never done anything wrong. Unambiguously, I have. We all make mistakes. So, where I feel like an amendment or an apology is warranted, I will do so. But where I feel like the criticism is being made in bad faith, is unreasonable, or is flat out untrue, I shan't bend the knee, because we here at Lindsey Ellis Industries are not in the business of serving bullshit. So I got my bell of shame here, and...
Why was she looking at her watch?
As the Black Eyed Peas would say, let's get it started.
Could you finish the rest of the original lyric? Could you do that for us? Let's get retarded. Oh, thanks for that follow, Hagbird. I appreciate it, man.
2020 Harriet Tubman fanfic. This one is like really popular. So the narrative here is that because of this tweet, I ship Harriet Tubman with her enslaver, and I want there to be fanfic of it. I'm just saying, you have to be giving this a very weird read in order to think that's what I meant, but I'm also going to go out on a limb and assume that most of the people mad about this have not seen the Harriet Tubman movie, or if they have, are not familiar with her real history. So the central conflict of the film revolves around Harriet's relationship to her.
So either you haven't seen this movie, or you're ignorant. How could there be any in between? Now, that Harriet movie is dumb, but I know who fucking Harriet Tubman is, or was, rather.
Enslaver, a twinky blonde guy named Gideon, played by Taylor Swift's then boyfriend. They are around the same age, they basically grow up together, and early in the film he's framed somewhat sympathetically until he propositions her, demands her submission and fealty, which of course she refuses, and then when she escapes he becomes obsessed with recapturing her, and he is the central antagonist of the entire film. But here's the thing about Gideon. He never existed. He was completely made up for the film. Harriet Tubman's IRL enslaver at the time of her escape was a woman, but instead of having the film center more around Harriet's journey after she got
more dog whistles, a woman, which she means white,
away from the Brodus family, it instead creates this character in the form of Taylor Swift's boyfriend as the antagonist, a man who, and I cannot express this enough, did not exist in real life. So basically, the film creates an OC that is like super obsessed with recapturing her in a movie where Harriet Tubman also has superpowers. It just felt a little fanficky to me. And so one day I was on an airplane and the person next to me was watching it, and I just kind of started wondering why the filmmakers decided to go that route with the film creatively, because again, it just kind of felt weird to me. Like, and you know, the final showdown in the film is between Harriet and Gideon in a forest that to me was somewhat evocative of the last showdown in The Force Awakens. And this was also kind of like at the height of...
Because that's as far back as she goes. That's about is where Lindsey Ellis can understand. It's just like, oh, it's like The Force Awakens. Like these are this is the fucking whole problem with modern cultural criticism, especially art criticism, movie criticism, film criticism rather, is that it's people like Lindsey who have don't know anything exists past 1992 because of their age. They have no real interest in the art form, its development, the pioneers of the craft. No, they're just like, oh, it just reminded me of the Force Awakens. I saw that a couple years ago. And this is somebody who has like, you know, a fucking 1,000,000+ subs and talks about movies and art and literature for a living. It's just insane. Insane.
This sort of thing, this tendency to fanficify historical figures that was partially enabled by Hamilton. So I just kind of idly have this thought like, oh man.
Oh, she's just like, oh no, Hamilton opened this idea to me that I could fanfic things, which he does is not that big of a deal, but it's stupid, but not that big of a deal.
I wonder if this movie spurned fic of these two characters. Oh God, actually, I'm not going to check because I don't want to know. Usually I don't really check my mentions, so I didn't see any angst.
So she made a joke. Oh, she made a joke about like, wow, seems like something the fan fiction community, the shippers, you know? The shippers, they'll probably glom onto this. She didn't endorse it. She didn't say it was a good thing or whatever. But I guess because she planted the seed, it was an evil. Hagbard says, bet she has never seen a single Hal Needham film. Savage.
Anger when I tweeted that. Only a few days later, once screen caps started circling, and then I got some white women in my DMs demanding that I do better and apologize, specifically not to them, but to all of my black fans that I hurt. So like an hour after I tweeted it, I was like, I better take this down because this is the sort of thing that someone could take out of context in bad faith. Well, so the reason I never addressed this is because like the read of that tweet in itself of me being thirsty for Harriet Gideon fanfic was just so absurd, I didn't know what to say. Now, to be clear, no, I should not have tweeted that at all. I was thinking in terms...
Why not? You tweeted kind of a passive joke. I should have never done this at all. Because it put bad thoughts in other people's heads. What a ridiculous standard. That's fucking insane.
In terms of the creative decision to create Gideon being kind of tone deaf, but the pithy way that I tweeted it still ostensibly glosses over the reality of white owners sexually abusing their slaves being the...
Oh my God, imagine having to take it that deep for a stupid offhand joke. This is where we are. This is where we are. Fucking ridiculous, dude. The only Hal Needham film I've actually seen is The Cannonball Run. No, that's not true. I've seen Smokey and the Bandit. Is there anything else I've seen? I think that's all I've seen. But I'm still better than Lindsey Ellis. I can tell you right now, Hagbard. I'm learning.
Historical norm, and that is in itself disrespectful. So while I definitely did not mean what people seem to think I meant, I definitely should not have said that. I was, as the kids say, showing my ass. Next, to 2009, autistic temper tantrum. Oof, boy, had to go way back for this one. People wonder why I privated all of my old videos. So I was in film school at the time, and my class was 80% male, and, you know, some of them had a fratty sense of humor. And while I was talking about this movie, Beauty and the Beast, The Enchanted Christmas, one of them made this remark about how the Beast, and I just kind of mindlessly regurgitated it. Beast shape. I'm gonna throw an autistic temper tantrum. Because I was...
And that's it. That's what she said. She just said that. And this is back in, what, like she said, 2009? And now she's trying to pivot and blame it on, like, oh, I was in film school at the time, and there's a lot of guys in there, and, you know, guys are fucking awful. And I was just exposed to this kind of humor, and it just influenced me that way, other than just saying, like, in 2009, a pretty normal joke to make. Pretty average thing for people to say. Not that big of a deal.
With an edgy boy website at the time, and I wanted to demonstrate that I wasn't like the other girls. I was a cool, edgy boy.
See, this is bullshit. Because it had nothing to do with, like, I was trying to prove myself to people, blah, 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 blah. No, it's how most people of her age, of my age, acted in 2009. You know, she would have been like 20 years old, 22 at the oldest. Not that weird. It's just not that weird. Like, sure, even if you're a woke idiot like Lindsey Ellis, like, the world has moved on. It is different now, for better or for worse. But back in 2009, that was pretty fucking par for the course, you know? Pretty common to say shit like that. Because that little clip she showed, that is the extent of it. That's all she said.
It was insensitive and careless. I definitely should not have said that.
Even in 2009, she's just like, let's just move on from that one. I'm sorry. Take a drink. She loves it, though. She gets to take a drink, though.
Next. 2013, The Prince of Egypt, anti-Semitism. God, I can't believe...
What year was that? She just saying. What?
Of innocent children in the narrative, you know, because the book of Exodus frames...
Hold on,
I believe somebody... of Egypt, anti-Semitism.
2013, okay.
God,
The world had not become woke yet. Still pretty edgy in 2013.
I can't believe somebody kept this for so long. I'm sorry. This took so much dedication. So the qualm here is that I did an anti-Semitism because I don't like the way the Prince of Egypt...
This is the adult discourse. I did an anti-Semitism.
You know, functionally excuses the mass slaughter of innocent children in the narrative, you know, because the book of Exodus frames it as a necessary evil. And yeah, I don't really care for the Prince of Egypt, and I just don't think the book of Exodus works as a kid's movie. Because it's a kid's movie, it has to frame the protagonists as understandable and relatable to modern family audiences, and frame what happens in the book of Exodus as, you know, all fine and good in the framework of the movie. Even when...
That's true. It's a very dark thing that happens. This is a fair criticism of Prince of Egypt, only relative to the fact that it is marketed as a children's movie. But if you look at, you know, at Exodus, and you look at the Ten Commandments, even the movie, right, with Moses, what happens with the plagues and what happens during that event, it's pretty fucking dark. It's a fair criticism to say that's pretty fucking dark. Nothing anti-Semitic about that. It's just like commenting on the idea that, like, this is included in a children's film, or this is a children's film. You know, that's a tough road to hoe.
When the good guys do some light, you know, mass slaughter. That 10th plague, man, it's a doozy. I remember when we got to Exodus in Sunday school, and, you know, when it got to the part of the wailing and lamentations of the Egyptian women, you know, when they woke up and there's no dead children, like, even at the age of 5, I was like, yeah, this is pretty fucked up. So my thought process here is that we take for granted the morality of narratives of biblical texts because we grew up with them and they just kind of have so much informed our cultural framework, when if a story like this existed independent of the Bible, it would probably be considered pretty messed up. especially considering how the movie frames it as all Pharaoh's fault because he's such a stubborn jerk.
Ramesses, you bring this upon yourself.
Like, at least in the Bible, God keeps hardening his heart. And the other thing is, like, in the way that the film progresses, it's really funny to me when, you know, like, mass slaughter of children happens. Pharaoh Ralph Fiennes is weeping over the corpse of his only son. And then...
Oh, it's actually pretty dark.
Val Kill Moses morosely pieces out, and then, bam, miracles. I mean, I guess in a...
So I hope she doesn't take a drink for this. If she's taking a drink for everything she said that she was wrong about, no, she's not wrong about this. Like, it's just dark subject matter for a kids movie. Period. End of story.
Matter of speaking, the 10th plague is a miracle. And this is not to say you can't make a modern movie about the Bible. I actually really liked Noah. It's easily my favorite Darren Aronofsky movie.
Of course you liked Noah. Of course you did. I say this is a lapsed Catholic, but of course Lindsey Ellis is the most secular version of the story. Also calls into question whether or not Noah's insane. It's the Kabbalist version of Noah. It's an eco movie. Hey now.
Because it leans in hard on how fucked up and traumatic it would be to have to sit back and, you know, watch and listen while every other human on Earth dies, you know, because God said so.
They are just people. There is room. There is no room for them.
But this is also an example of me using Twitter to feel out other people's opinions before I do video content. Thing I will never do again. A lot of people were like, yeah, but you know, this movie means a lot to me, and you know, a lot of that is because of like my religion or my culture, and that was when I decided I was not ever going to touch this movie as a topic for a video. And in the context of this thread, I shouldn't have used the word genocide, considering it's a film about Jewish characters, and for that I do apologize. Like, I don't...
So if the genocide occurs in the movie, but the race of characters were the genocide, and that's your problem with it, but the race of characters is considered like a taboo or a minority. You just cannot bring up these subjects because of something that happens in their history. So you're just not allowed to address it and say that you're either bothered by it or give some sort of analysis. Self-censorship. But for a dumb reason. Like the idea that like you have animosity towards a group of people because you were just like, oh, well, you know, the subject matter is really dark. It's really fucked up. Is absurd.
I don't think I'd be making the world a better place by talking about why I don't think the Prince of Egypt works, because I don't feel that strongly about it. It's not a big deal. I'm not really here for thing you like is bad actually content for its own sake. Although I love how every tweet in this thread has trigger warnings. Trigger warning, she didn't like the Prince of Egypt.
The Prince of Egypt's not great. Just go watch the Ten Commandments. You want to see pageantry? You want to see Hollywood? Go watch the Ten Commandments. Buy it on 4K now. Great transfer.
Next. 2013, Charlie's Angels NIGHTCAP. This is another one I've addressed a few times, most recently on a live stream a few years ago where we rewatched it and had a high old time laughing about what a comical example of early 2010s white feminism this was. You know what, guys? I'm sorry. I'm calling it. Like... Feminism is over. I'm sorry. We tried. We did our best.
But it's our feminism too.
We
just can't end it for everyone.
I'm not sick of the go make me a sandwich jokes. Yeah, so not gonna lie, this one's pretty bad. This whole thing came about.
Hagbird says, I'm more disturbed that Noah is her favorite Aronofsky movie. I agree. I don't hate Noah. It's not the worst movie in the world. What's my favorite Aronofsky movie? Now that I'm thinking about it, I like The Fountain, and Black Swan. Those are probably my favorites. I recently revisited Requiem for a Dream, and did not feel it held up very well at all. But anyways, the NIGHTCAP here. So she's like, oh, early 2010s white feminist lady. There's nothing more horrific. There's nothing more anti-women than the hijab or the NIGHTCAP, however you want to say it. Those are awful things because they're not like voluntary in most places in the world. And she fucking knows that. But they're going to do this kind of performative wokeness where you have like this sector of people in Western worlds that are like, well, this means something to us and we're going to do it, even though it doesn't apply to the vast majority of people that are forced to do that. To suggest that like hiding yourself in a beekeeper outfit is somehow pro-women in a Western sense, where all the progress has been made for humanity in general, is bullshit. And she's just going to be performative woke, and it's gonna be stupid. Here we go.
When I was on Twitter one day talking about doing a video on Charlie's Angels and trying to think of like how visually to dress myself that was like the opposite of Charlie's Angels, and someone on Twitter was like, hey, you should do it in a burqa with like pigtails poking out, and I thought that idea was funny.
Is too confusing. We don't know what we want. It is apparently way too much to ask that women like either have a certain body type or dress a certain way.
Oh, like so oh my god, she made a joke. Actually, this is like based era Lindsey Ellis. Where she was doing funny shit. And now we are where we are today.
Way without being judged for it. So, two options. Burqa or slut.
That's not a burqa, and that's a false dichotomy.
And even at the time, several of my Muslim followers were like...
They even make a joke in that sketch that she doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. So even if you wanted to guard yourself in a certain respect, you could say that. Like, oh, well, the character of Nostalgia Chick that I'm playing, making this review, is so fucking stupid. She doesn't know the difference between a niqab and a hijab, or whatever the fuck you want to say. Like... Clearly a joke, a self-deprecating one at that. But she has to reflexively be like, no, that was bad. I shouldn't even be allowed to do that. The self-sinceriousness is really gross.
Please do not do this. This is a bad idea. And okay, so this is not excusing it, but here is some context. So at the time, my next door neighbor was an Egyptian expat named Hajar, and she was/is a full niqabi, meaning whenever she goes outside, she dresses in like the full, well, basically what I was wearing, minus the pigtails sticking out. And basically Hajar was like the only next door neighbor I've ever been friends with. And it's another one of those weird problems of considering culture as a monolith. Like, one would assume, or at least I assumed, that like she would have zero interest in talking to me and we would have nothing in common, considering she's like super...
That's because you're a racist and you're a bigot, Lindsay. Oh no. I have never met somebody that I assumed would not like want to speak to me because of any cultural identifier. Because you're a fucking dumb, woke Karen, and you were back then. Apparently you are still today. You have not actually changed that much, witchy woman. You just haven't.
Super religious. And yes, some women do it voluntarily, but that's its own thing. I'm not going to get into it. But basically one day...
I'm not going to get into the actual difficult conversation about what those things mean and who decides to do what and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into that. Like, it's not for me to say, Look at the skin, look at the color of her skin. Not for her to say. I agree.
We started talking when I was watching The Hunchback of Notre Dame too loud. Really. And she was like, she caught me on the landing like... So Hunchback of Notre Dame, huh? So anyway, I mentioned this thing to her and she was like, yeah, whatever, that's hilarious, lol. And so this is not excusing it, but I kind of took that as, well, my friend I know personally said it's fine, so I'm going to, take that opinion.
Hold on. My favorite Darren Aronofsky movie is The Wrestler. I cannot even fucking believe I forgot The Wrestler. It's The Wrestler. Hands down, The Wrestler. Continue.
Over these strangers. But again, even at the time, I had people on Twitter saying, do not do this thing, and I ignored them. And either way, I wasn't making content for Egyptian expats, which I'm pretty sure she's never even seen one of my videos. And either way, it was also completely unnecessary to the point of the video. Like,
yeah, because people like them, people like, to Lindsay, people like her, Egyptian expats, whatever, the keyboard wearing people, they would never experience culture. They probably don't even watch YouTube, right? Again, showing her bigotry, showing her this layer that she's put upon this person. She just criticized herself for having a preconception, and then there she does it again. But that's okay because she's doing it to be self-deprecating and woke.
Could have made the exact same point with like a potato sack with pigtails sticking out, and it probably would have been funnier. This one was bad and wrong for a lot of reasons, and I do regret that.
She should have done it with a KKK hood with the pigtails coming out at the back. Honestly, right? I mean, that would have been funny too. KKK members obviously not having a lot of respect for women. Could have done the same thing, Lindsay. Think outside the box.
Next. 2018, Stephanie Meyer apologia. So the Dear Stephanie Meyer video was about me reflecting on how carelessly I had participated in the casual misogyny surrounding the early Twilight backlash around the time that the first movie came out, you know, late 2000s. And so the general objection here is that the video is racist because I neither mentioned nor condemned Stephanie Meyer's depiction of the Quileute people. So I'm not going to lie and say I didn't consider addressing it, and I did have some conversations on Twitter with Indigenous people that were actually productive. See, Twitter's not always bad, just, you know, mostly. But there were two main reasons I decided not to discuss it in that video, you know, besides the fact that that was back when I was trying to keep videos around like the 20-minute mark. One was the fact that during the backlash of the late 2010s, Twilight's appropriation of the Quileute was not a common criticism and certainly was not weaponized against Stephanie Meyer. It is now, but that just was not a substantial proportion.
Oh, do you think people have just gone down a rabbit hole of such strong bullshit that they're just like, oh, what else can we get this dumb bitch for? What else can we get this Twilight bitch for? Oh, she included Native Americans in her story. When was the last time Native Americans were in like a piece of popular fiction? They should be sending her a fucking thank you card for bringing awareness. Give me a break, dude. Those werewolves, you know, if anything, you could say they're gay. I don't mean that as a slight either. Everybody is equal. But you could say that. Those boys look like they ran in packs. Looks like they jerked each other off. Just saying.
Of the backlash at that time. The second one is, once again, we come to this question of the voices of a group being considered a monolith. I definitely talked to some Indigenous people that condemned it, but I also saw some that were like, yeah, actually, no, it's not the best, but I liked it. It was something new. It was like a representation we hadn't seen before. It was refreshing to have Jacob as this character who isn't like a noble savage stereotype and isn't like magically in tune with nature and doesn't have like a sad, broken family. He's just like a nice, normal kid who lives on the res and vibes, you know, at least in the first book. Again, this video was addressing a point in time before Breaking Dawn came out. So I just wasn't really comfortable making a value judgment on which of those was the correct opinion, especially because it didn't really feel relevant to the central thesis. And it's also a complicated issue that just didn't feel at home in that video. Like, for instance, on the one hand, the way the Quileute are depicted in Twilight puts the onus on the real Quileute to educate people that they're not werewolves.
And then the elders, they you know, said, hey, Miss Anne, you got to get out there and educate people that we're really not werewolves.
But on the other hand, the attention...
That would be, you're a fucking idiot then. You're a fucking idiot then. If this is a valid concern, if people came away from the Twilight movies thinking that the Quileute tribe of Native Americans were really werewolves, or they had this belief, those are called fucking mongoloids. Those are called fucking morons. And you should not pay them any attention.
Twilight has brought to the tribe has helped them tremendously, not just through tourism, but actually helped them get land back from the feds.
It's opened the way for our tribe economically, and then the media, it helped us a lot. You know,
people come around and ask us if we're werewolves.
Our ancestors and our past council members have been fighting for over 50 years for our northern boundary dispute. To actually have that day and have President Obama sign, you know, a document saying that, you know, this land is yours. It was like...
all thanks to Twilight, baby. Like I said, they should be sending Stephanie Meyers a fucking check.
Wow.
But on the other hand, Stephenie Meyer is a multi-millionaire many times over. It is kind of weird that she has given none of that wealth, as far as I know, back to a people whose culture she appropriated.
She doesn't have to, and they were not the main focus of that story. I'm not a fan of those things. I think I've seen like a couple of the movies. They're not the main focus of those movies. Why would she ever feel like she has to? But this is this thing. Like, oh, well, you did this thing that actually ends up like creating this positive result, but also fuck you. Because you didn't do as much as I think was right. I think. Lindsey Ellis is an author. She writes, she's written one book in a series, I believe, that is like kind of a knockoff of 90s science fiction stuff, tropes from like Sci-Fi Channel movies and blah, blah, blah. Is she going to go write checks to all of the creators that she ripped off? Is she going to like, from like a epistemological level, going to go back and like find the roots of everything that she ripped off and pay fucking money to? No, she is not. It's an absurd fucking assertion. It's an absurd assertion.
For supernatural love triangles. And while we're on this topic, Amanda the Jedi has been doing a Twilight retrospective, and she brought to my attention a fundraiser that the Quileute have been running for a few years to help move some of their village to higher ground to, protect them from all the tsunamis and, the climate change and whatnot. So that is linked below. If I did the video again...
The climate change and whatnot, things I don't even know anything really about. I just fucking say these things.
And especially now that my videos are like 8 hours long, I'd probably add a little bit mentioning that this conversation became prominent later, but this criticism does kind of always give me weird vibes because it usually comes with this subtext of, and this is why Stephenie Meyer did and still does deserve the harassment she got. One, that is not why people were hassling her in 2008, so I could not fold that into the valid common criticisms folder, and two, no one deserves that. Next. 2018, Transphobia via Tarzan. I genuinely, honestly, really do regret this one, and I have said so a few times. Why do they never screen cap the retractions? Weird. When it was announced that LeFou would become the...
Oh no, you have to deal with what everybody has to deal with on social media. Oh no, just bad face stuff. And the reason why I'm like harping so bad or so harshly on her for this stuff is because she engages in the same kind of fucking behavior. And she's even done it a few times in this video already. It's obnoxious. It's bad faith. It's not... she's part of creating a culture of the stuff that now she is a victim of.
The first out gay character in a Disney movie. The L's, the G's, the B's, the T's, and of course all you filthy cues.
I think it was like 15 minutes after this video went live that I was like, oh god, why did I do that? Less because I was thinking about the optics so much as it wasn't a good joke. Like, I should have used Mulan, goddamn my eyes. I thought this idea of AFAB Turk being angry about wearing a dress was funny, but in hindsight, I really should have considered that it wasn't just any Disney character. It was a gorilla, an animal that trans women are sometimes compared to, and it was extreme.
Oh no, she's talking about black women. Because that's how she feels.
Extremely careless. And it's a shame because I otherwise really do like that video. Next.
Alright, so whatever the next thing is going to be the last thing. We're going to stop the video after this next segment. I hope it's not too long. I really got to piss. But, yeah, we try to keep these at about 3 hours. So we're about 3 hours. We're going to do this last segment, and we will pick up maybe next time, probably Monday. We'll finish the video off. If I get a chance before that, we'll do that as well. If you would like to find the archives of all this stuff, there's a YouTube channel. If you look at the About page, all that stuff is there. Go check it out. We have a lot of fun stuff, movie reviews, analysis, fun podcasts. So yeah, thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and thanks for following. And we'll finish this off, and then we'll see you next time.
2020. Trans men don't experience oppression, actually. I didn't say that. I said that anecdotally, I had heard from a few trans men over my 80-odd years of existence that they felt that they didn't experience the same level of scrutiny or harassment that they had before they transitioned.
No shit. No shit. Oh, they didn't have the female experience before they transitioned to being female? Whoa. Or no. Sorry. You know what I mean.
Because of misogyny. That said, this was also before Elliot Page came out, and I've seen so many people be beastly to him, so, you know, that is a strong counterexample. And I could say that I can't speak for all trans men's experiences, but I didn't claim to.
Yeah, nobody gives a fuck about trans men because it doesn't affect any specific paradigm of the way people exist. It's a dumb argument. We actually talked about this in the first hour or so of this live stream. So the archive will be there.
And I'm not sure how you could read that into my statement. I was just repeating anecdotes I had heard. So some of the hate mail I've been getting is calling me a TERF because of this, which I think is really funny. It's like, called a TERF for saying trans men are men. All right. Next.
All right, that's it. We gotta stop there. We have to stop there. I've been going too long. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Like I said, check out the stuff in the About page. Check out the things in the description. A lot of fun stuff coming down the pike. This is not always a one-man operation, but NIGHTCAP is. And I appreciate you hanging out. Thanks a lot, Hagbard. I really do appreciate it. And we'll talk to you when we talk to you. We'll talk to you next time. Roll on, darling. All right. Have a good night.